Hello there and welcome. Tonight, let me gently guide you into the soft and shadowed folds of the past, to a world lit not by neon and screens, but by firelight and laughter, where songs drifted through meadows and painted faces danced in the dusk. This is not the world you know, but one buried beneath centuries of dust and memory. Let your breath slow, let your thoughts untangle, because tonight we begin our quiet journey into the secret soul of the Middle Ages. Not through the clash of steel or the politics of kings, but through the raucous, rowdy, magical spectacle that was the medieval festival. Yes, these gatherings were wild, sometimes joyful, sometimes terrifying, always unforgettable. For over 1,000 years, across the green spine of Europe, people carved sacred moments from ordinary time to feast, to play, to lose themselves in something bigger, older, and stranger than themselves. So settle in now. Close your eyes if you'd like. And let me take you back to where it all began. The first whisper of celebration came not from royalty or town criers, but from the very turning of the earth. Long before there were banners or jesters or saintly relics paraded through city streets, there were the seasons, quiet rulers of the medieval world. And the first medieval festivals were born not of human invention, but of reverence. Reverence for the sun, the rain, the growing stalk, and the returning warmth. In the earliest centuries of medieval Christendom, festivals often grew from much older pagan roots that still pulsed beneath the surface, even as churches rang their bells and priests murmured Latin. Picture a village, perhaps somewhere in northern France, nestled between a quiet river and a rising forest. The people here are poor, their lives defined by labour, hunger, and the raw intimacy of nature. Days are long and punishing, winters bite. But there is one solace, the cycle, planting, tending, harvesting, and then a feast, a gathering, a day or three of escape. The Feast of St. John, Midsummer's Eve, just one example among hundreds. A sacred date in the Christian calendar, but also a night of fire and fertility drawn from ancient solstice rites. Bonfires blazed across the hills, men leapt over flames in ecstatic ritual. Girls wove flower crowns and whispered wishes into the dark. It was said that if you looked into a mirror at midnight, you might see your future lover standing behind you. Wild herbs gathered on midsummer's morning were stronger, magical even. So began the strange blend of holy and heathen that defined the medieval festival, part devotion, part delirium. A moment when time cracked open and the world grew strange. In these early days, festivals were still deeply local. A celebration in one village might look utterly different from its neighbour just a few valleys away. Saints were adopted like extended family. A relic, a chipped bone, a sliver of wood might arrive, carried by monks and trailed by pilgrims, and a new holiday would be born. Entire calendars rearranged themselves around these events. It was during these days that the first great processions took shape. Picture a line of villagers, dusty and barefoot, bearing an effigy of their chosen saint. Bells clanging, incense curling through the air, children tugging at their mother's sleeves, eyes wide. The statue might be dressed in real cloth, adorned with flowers, and given pride of place in the church afterward. But for those few hours, it moved through the people like a god. Still, even at their most pious, there was a certain looseness, a freedom. The church might set the date and bless the bread, but it could not, and often did not try to, control what followed. Once the mass ended and the priests returned to their cloisters, the people spilled out into the squares and fields. And then the real revelry began. These festivals became a pressure valve for medieval life, a place where hierarchy might be inverted, if only for a moment. The lord might open his stores and serve the peasants. The jester might mock the bishop, in riddles, of course. Rules bent like saplings, sins were forgiven, or at least forgotten. The world ever so briefly turned upside down. And in that inversion, joy bloomed. There was music, rough and wild, played on bagpipes and shawms and rebecks. There was food, thick stews, crusty loaves, roasted meats where they could be spared. There was drink, of course, and much of it. Ale flowed like water, and with drink came dancing, laughter, the loosening of tongues. Morris dancers in ribbons and bells, men dressed as beasts or devils, women painting their cheeks and braiding herbs into their hair. These were not quiet people in those moments. They were firelit, full of spirit, chasing something older than themselves. Children ran underfoot, drunk on honey cakes and stolen apples. Old women told fortunes. Young lovers slipped away into the woods. No one quite remembered everything the next day, but that was part of the spell. As word spread and towns grew, festivals became more elaborate, more theatrical. Guilds and merchant associations began sponsoring events. Tournaments were added, jousting, archery, competitions of wit. Mystery plays began to appear, telling biblical stories with homemade costumes and wooden stages. In some places, passion plays drew thousands, a full reenactment of the life, death and resurrection of Christ, often with blood and thunder. And yet, even as these spectacles grew, the wild heart of the festival remained. The laughter was too loud, the costumes too absurd, the dancing too free for the comfort of the powerful. Church leaders sometimes condemned these celebrations, especially those with lingering pagan flavour. But they were tolerated. Why? Because they worked, they pacified, they soothed. They gave people something to look forward to, something to remember when the fields were fallow and the cold came creeping in. And always there was the knowledge that it would come again, that once the days grew long, or the harvest was gathered, or the patron saint's bones were polished and placed on display, the music would rise again, the bread would be broken, the festival would return. So in the early medieval centuries, a tradition took root, one that began with fire and faith, with hunger and hope. It was a tradition born of necessity, and it quickly became a vital heartbeat of life. And this was only the beginning. In our next Whisper of History, we'll follow the festival from the humble village square to the towering cities of late medieval Europe, where the crowds swelled, the costumes grew bolder, and the lines between holiness and chaos blurred into something unforgettable. But for now, rest. Let the music fade. The firelight dim. We are only at the edge of the revelry. There is so much more to see. When next we awaken in the cradle of memory, we find ourselves not in a sleepy hamlet or a mist-wrapped valley, but at the gates of a thriving medieval town. The air here carries the tang of many things: roasted meat, spilled wine, the faint rot of refuse in the gutters, and beneath it all the iron tang of anticipation. It is the morning of the feast of Corpus Christi, and already the cobbled streets are thrumming with life. Town criers have shouted their proclamations since dawn, bells have clanged with insistent urgency, and the people, hundreds of them, are spilling from crooked doorways and wooden balconies like water from an overfull jug. You see, by the 12th and 13th centuries, medieval festivals had begun to evolve beyond mere rural tradition. They had grown teeth and wings. The cities, swollen with trade and power, had begun to embrace the festival as both spectacle and statement, a stage upon which to dazzle, unify, and occasionally control. The Corpus Christi procession was one of the most anticipated. Instituted by the Church in the mid-13th century, it was a celebration of the Eucharist, a holy reminder of the body and blood of Christ, made manifest in bread and wine. But what unfolded on these city streets was something far more vivid. From the carved stone doors of the cathedral emerged a tide of clergy, draped in gold-stitched vestments, chanting in low, rhythmic Latin. Behind them came the guilds, each one eager to outshine the last, the bakers with wreaths of warm loaves strung across their shoulders, the weavers with vibrant banners of wool fluttering like sails, the fishmongers bearing enormous wooden tridents and masks of scales and fins. Each trade had its place in the parade. Each played its part in this ritual theatre of the city. And what a theatre it was. Platforms on wheels were dragged through the winding streets. Pageant wagons, they were called, each bearing scenes from Scripture, painted and acted with a raw, homemade grandeur. Noah's Ark, with costumed beasts and children playing doves. The Temptation of Christ, where the devil, played by a local tailor with a wicked glint in his eye, lured the Saviour with wine and silver. And the Crucifixion, always the most solemn, often shockingly lifelike, the actor bound with ropes to a cross as the crowd held its collective breath. The townspeople, from merchant elites to barefoot beggars, lined the streets 3 or 4 bodies deep. Children were hoisted onto shoulders. Old men leaned on canes. Vendors moved among the crowd, hawking honeyed almonds, hot meat pies, and tankards of ale already sloshing before midday. The city pulsed with a strange unity. A brief moment when rich and poor, sacred and profane, stood side by side under the same sun, eyes turned in the same direction. Of course, not everything was so dignified. As the day wore on and the sun climbed higher, the line between worship and revelry blurred. After the final wagon passed and the procession wound back toward the cathedral, many followed, but just as many drifted away, lured by the promise of games, dancing and drink. By late afternoon, the city square was a carnival. Jugglers tossed knives to the beat of tabor drums. Bear baiters led muzzled beasts through crowds eager for spectacle. Fire breathers sent shimmering plumes into the blue sky. Puppeteers told obscene tales beneath linen canopies, while crowds howled with laughter and scandal. And the masks. Oh, the masks, worn by those who wished to shed their names and selves. They ranged from simple cloth veils to elaborate constructions of feathers, fur, and painted wood. Behind them, a merchant might become a satyr, a milkmaid, a queen. Freed from identity, people danced more wildly, drank more deeply, whispered secrets they might never utter with their own faces showing. A brewer's apprentice, face streaked with ash and ochre, howled songs of ancient gods long forgotten. A widow in white led a mock funeral for a stuffed effigy of winter, which was later set aflame and pushed downriver. Laughter chased the smoke as it twisted into the sky. These were not merely entertainments, they were rituals of transformation. They allowed a weary populace to become something else, if only for a day. And within that transformation was a quiet resistance to hunger, to grief, to power. But the wildness had its price. By twilight, the mood often shifted. Ale turned sour in the belly, tempers flared, old feuds reignited with fists and broken mugs. Thieves moved like fish through the crowd, cutting purses with practiced ease. A few drunken lovers disappeared into alleyways and never re-emerged. And sometimes, far worse, violence took hold, not just between individuals but between factions. In cities like Florence or Ghent, rival guilds might clash during festivals. Brawls broke out between districts. A spilled drink or a careless insult could trigger hours of chaos. Fires lit, guards summoned. Bells rang not in celebration but in warning. Still, these risks did little to dim the people's hunger for festival. If anything, the danger added a certain thrill. Life in medieval cities was never safe, never easy, and perhaps the chaos of the festival simply mirrored the world itself. Yet amidst the disorder there was beauty. At night, lanterns floated in rivers like stars unmoored, music curled from balconies, the square, now quieter, filled with soft songs and slow dances. Lovers swayed together in the shadow of great stone walls. Children, exhausted, clutched ribbons and crumbled sweets, heads heavy on their mothers' laps. And somewhere above it all, from the high tower of the cathedral, a final bell tolled. Low and slow. It signalled the end, for now. Tomorrow the square would return to commerce. The fishmongers would scrub blood from the stones. The actors would pack their costumes away. But for one day, the city had sung. Had become something else. This was the medieval festival in its urban form, sacred, profane, theatrical and unpredictable. A reflection of the very cities that hosted it, crowded, chaotic, bursting with life. In the next chapter of our tale, we will leave the cities behind once more. For while towns offered spectacle and pageantry, the countryside hid older, wilder rituals. There, in forests and fields, untouched by the order of stone and scripture, something stranger still was taking root. But for now, let the last echoes of laughter fade, let the smoke drift gently into the darkening sky, and let your breath grow still once more. Dawn breaks softly over the countryside, not with the clamour of cathedral bells or the shouting of merchants, but with mist curling over the meadows and birdsong trickling through the trees. We are far now from the crowded cities and their painted pageants. Here, among hedgerows and hidden glades, the festival breathes differently. It is quieter, older, stranger. The people who live in these woods and pastures carry with them a memory that predates parchment and pulpit. They know the names of herbs that heal and the whispers of streams that once ran red with offering. And though they call themselves Christian and kneel in the tiny chapels scattered across these lands, there are other devotions, older devotions, that surface when the seasons turn. It is the night before May Day. A fire crackles in the centre of a clearing, its flames reaching up as if trying to kiss the stars. Around it, figures move like shadows, men, women, and children alike. Their faces are lit not by torchlight alone, but by something more primal, anticipation. This is Beltane, or rather, what remains of Beltane, twisted and reshaped by time and doctrine, yet still pulsing with the heartbeat of the earth. No priests are present here. No guild banners fly. There are no relics, no Latin chants, and yet the sacred hangs thick in the air. Couples weave ribbons around a maypole, laughing, breathless. Boys paint their faces with ash and berry. Girls wear wreaths of wildflowers and skirts stitched with bells. A few elders stand to the side, watching, remembering. They've seen this before, dozens of times perhaps, and yet each year it feels like something new. The bonfire is not just light and warmth, it is a gate. To leap over it is to cleanse oneself, to court luck, to cast off illness and ill fortune. The brave, or the drunk, take running starts, legs kicking high as they soar above the flames. When they land, the crowd erupts with cheers or laughter depending on the grace of the leap. Later, the cattle will be driven between twin fires, their flanks steaming, their hooves thudding softly against the earth. It is said to protect them, to bless the herd for the months to come. Such rites are tolerated barely by the church, so long as no words are spoken that echo the old gods. But words are not always necessary. The land remembers. Somewhere deeper in the woods, away from the fire's reach, a smaller circle is formed. Here, cloaked in secrecy and silence, a different ritual unfolds. The green man is crowned, a young man chosen for his beauty and strength, draped in leaves and vines, his face painted with sap and soil. He is the spirit of spring itself, made flesh for one night. He dances with the May Queen, a girl crowned with hawthorn and primrose, her white dress embroidered with gold thread. Their steps are slow at first, almost solemn, but they quicken as drums pick up. Around them, others dance too, caught in the fever of the moment. It is not lewd, though it is sensual, not profane, though it skirts the edge of something forbidden. It is life distilled, the celebration of rebirth, of return, of warmth after cold. And when the dawn finally creeps through the canopy, staining the leaves with gold, the green man and the May Queen slip away, into a tent, a cave, or simply the forest. No one follows. What happens is understood, not spoken of. It is symbolic, and yet entirely real. Children born 9 months later, it is whispered, are blessed or cursed, depending on the mood of the teller. By noon, the villagers gather in the fields. A rough feast has been prepared. Bread, cheese, early greens, cider thick and sweet. It is not a feast of excess like those in the towns, but it is enough. The people sing songs they've sung since their grandparents' days. Some sing in dialects now nearly lost, strange lilting phrases whose meanings have faded, but whose music lingers. Old women tell fortunes with bones and beads. A boy wrestles a goat. A girl races barefoot to the edge of the river, her laugh trailing like a ribbon behind her. And though they all know the work will return tomorrow, the planting, the mending, the hauling, for today, they are something else. Not peasants, not serfs, just people, breathing, singing, touching the sky. This kind of celebration has no charter, no official date, no sanctioned relic. It exists outside the bounds of civic order, and yet it persists, year after year, century after century. Sometimes the church tries to intervene, a sermon delivered with particular sternness, a visiting bishop condemning the forest orgies, as he calls them. Once, a bailiff tries to fine the May Queen for indecency. But he is found the next morning with his boots missing, tied to the maypole with garlands around his neck. A joke, of course. Nothing more. The land protects its own. These rural festivals, though quieter and less chronicled, were the roots from which all others grew. They carried something raw, untamed, a reminder that joy need not be sanctioned to be sacred. They were also acts of defiance, against hunger, against oppression, against the slow grind of time, a way to say, we are still here, we still remember. As night falls once more and the embers of the bonfire glow like eyes in the dark, a girl hums a tune beside her sleeping sister. It is a song passed down, generation to generation, never written, only sung, about a tree that blooms every 100 years, about a man made of bark and breath, about a spring that never ends. Tomorrow she'll forget parts of it. The day after, she'll return to her chores. But for tonight, the magic lingers. And in the next chapter of our story, we will follow the festival across borders into the icy markets of the north and the sun-drenched plazas of the south, where faith, folklore and feast take on strange and wondrous forms. The heart of celebration beats in every land, but it sings in different tongues. For now, let us rest once more, where grass cradles our heads and the stars keep watch above. The fire may fade, but the memory glows on. The wind has shifted, and with it our journey drifts across mountains and rivers, through whispering forests and stony plains, until at last we come upon a marketplace glittering with frost. We are far north now, where winter clings longer and the sun rides low, even in summer. But here too, in this land of deep fjords and long nights, the festival lives. Not despite the cold, but because of it. It is Yuletide. The village is modest, its houses thatched and rimmed with snow, their roofs creaking gently under its weight. Smoke rises from every chimney, forming a soft haze above the crooked lanes. And in the central square, life surges like a thawed river. The Yule festival is old, much older than its Christian overlay. Long before Christ walked upon the earth, these northern peoples gathered at the turning of the year to mark the rebirth of the sun, that golden eye which disappeared for weeks at a time, and whose return was a cause for reverence, fear, and joy. The days have been dark, so dark, but now there is light. A goat carved from straw stands proudly in the square, adorned with red ribbon. The children call it the Julebock. Once it may have been an offering to unseen spirits. Now it is a symbol, a keeper of tradition. Sometimes it is even worn. The village's strongest lad drapes himself in a great goat's hide, complete with curling horns, and charges through the streets, bellowing and capering. The children shriek in delight, scattering like leaves. There are games, of course, skating across frozen ponds, wrestling in snowbanks, chasing each other with bundles of dried herbs. But this is a festival of the hearth as much as the square. Inside every home, candles flicker beside thick loaves of rye and spiced sausages strung above the fire. Families press close together, wrapped in wool, sharing tales that grow longer with each telling. Some speak of the tomte, the house spirits with long beards and red caps who bless the home, provided they're given porridge and respect. Others whisper of darker things. Trolls in the hills, wolves that walk upright when the moon is high, women who vanish into snowstorms and return with eyes of ice. It is a night for stories, and oh how they travel. From one hearth to the next, a tale weaves its way through the village, of Odin, the old god, still remembered by the very oldest grandmothers. They speak of the wild hunt, when he rides through the sky on his ghostly horse, accompanied by lost souls and hounds of fire. Some say they've seen him, just before the blizzard comes, his beard trailing like smoke. These are not Christian stories, not exactly, but they live beside the new ones. No one dares say them too loudly in church, but neither are they forgotten. And the church itself, what a strange, silent guardian it is. During Yule, it stands both in blessing and in tension with the older rites. The priests speak of Christ's birth, of Mary's suffering, of holy peace. And indeed, a wooden nativity scene has been carved and set out beside the altar. But the villagers, wrapped in furs and still smelling of smoke and pine, bring with them gifts that do not always match the Bible's pages. A carved apple, a bundle of birch twigs, a coin tied in red thread, offerings that speak of survival, of winter's edge, of deep bargains with the unknown. Later that night, in the biggest house, the home of the village elder, a feast is laid out. Not lavish, but generous. Stewed venison, roasted roots, ale brewed with spruce tips and honey. Every chair is filled, every corner warmed. The songs begin low, just murmured lines passed from mother to daughter, father to son. But they grow, gathering strength like snow piling on rooftops. One song tells of the sun, bound in chains beneath the earth, breaking free at last. Another of a girl who married the north wind and rode the sky on a sleigh of bone and gold. The rhythms are ancient, and they rock the children into slumber before the hearth, cheeks pink, fingers curled like buds. At midnight, a hush falls. It is time. Each person rises and in silence carries a small candle outside. The snow crunches beneath their boots. The stars glimmer like frost on black velvet, and one by one they place their candles on the snowbanks, letting the flame touch the cold. A field of stars, flickering, fragile. This, they say, is to guide the spirits. Not of gods or monsters, but of ancestors. The ones who walked before, who once celebrated Yule just as they do now. It is a moment that holds all the weight of time, each flickering light a memory. each breath in the frigid air a promise. Then, as quickly as it began, the silence breaks. Someone laughs, loud and long. A child throws a snowball. A dog barks and charges after it. The festival lives again. By morning the candles have burned low, their wax melted into the snow, but the warmth remains. The people return to their homes. They eat, they sleep, they dream. And in those dreams they walk with old gods and familiar ghosts. They feast beneath trees heavy with snow. They hear laughter echo across frozen lakes. This is the Yule Festival, a celebration of endurance, of remembering, of holding light in the darkest days. And far to the south, under a very different sky, another festival stirs. One of fire and wine, of colour and noise, where masks bloom like petals in the streets, and saints are honoured with music so loud it rattles the soul. In our next chapter, we will travel to the sunlit courts of the Mediterranean, where carnival reigns, wild, opulent, unrepentantly joyous. But for now, let the snow cradle you. Let the stories settle like dust in your dreams, and let the fire within you glow softly, steadily until the sun returns. The sun rises warm and golden over tiled rooftops and twisting alleyways. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chime, their sound cutting through the morning like silver thread. We are far from the cold breath of northern winters now. This is the south, perhaps Venice, perhaps Barcelona, perhaps Naples, a place where stone holds the heat of centuries and the sea is never far. It is carnival. Even before the formal start, the city feels restless, like an animal ready to leap. Windows are flung open, and from them, fabrics of red and gold and blue flutter like pennants in the wind. The streets are swept, stages are being built, and the scent of citrus and fried dough hangs thick in the air. But this is not just a day of feasting or parade. It is something deeper, something ancient. Carnival comes before Lent, a time of fasting, penance, quiet prayer, and so Carnival is its mirror, a last wild breath before 40 days of restraint. It is indulgence sharpened by the knowledge of coming denial. It is joy that knows it cannot last and is all the more fevered for it. And here, in this Mediterranean city, it is a fever that seizes all. As the morning unfolds, masks begin to appear. First subtly, a noble woman with a silk domino veil, a merchant's child with a simple painted face, but soon they are everywhere. Each face becomes a mystery, a story. Some are beautiful, smooth porcelain, rimmed in gold, lips curled in permanent smiles. Others are grotesque, long noses, furrowed brows, grimacing mouths that seem to sneer at the world. These masks have names, the Bauta, the Moretta, the Volto, and each one carries its own legacy. Underneath them, identities dissolve. A beggar might walk beside a duke, and none would know the difference. A nun might flirt in secret, a soldier might sing like a poet. There is a freedom in anonymity, a kind of sacred release, and in this strange democracy of disguise, the city blooms. Music bursts from every square, mandolins, flutes, tambourines, dancers whirl in brightly coloured skirts, ribbons trailing from their wrists, acrobats swing from ropes stretched between balconies, confetti rains down like flower petals. And the people? Oh, the people, they laugh and shout and throw themselves into the moment, as if it were the last in the world. Vendors weave through the throng selling sweets wrapped in paper, fritters dusted with sugar, almonds roasted with honey, and little cakes shaped like masks and moons. Wine flows, red and rich, sloshing from clay pitchers into waiting cups. Even the children drink, just a little, their eyes sparkling with mischief. At the heart of the revelry, a puppet theatre draws a dense crowd. Here, the old Commedia dell'arte comes to life. Harlequin, with his patchwork clothes and quick tongue, Colombina, clever and bold, Pantalone, greedy and forever fooled. Their stories are absurd, improvised, often scandalous. The audience roars with laughter, throwing coins and insults in equal measure. No one is spared mockery, not the wealthy, not the clergy, not the law. And that is the point. Carnival is a licensed rebellion, a turning of the world upside down. For these few days, the usual rules are suspended. The powerful are parodied. The sacred is danced around and dared. It is not disrespect. It is ritual, a release valve. Even the church, with all its grandeur, tolerates the excess, within limits. A masked confessor listens to mock sins in a darkened corner of the square, replying in riddles. A statue of a saint is dressed in ribbons and paraded with laughter instead of solemn chants. And always the priests watch with quiet eyes, knowing that soon, very soon, they will call for silence once more. As dusk descends, the revelry deepens. Lamps are lit, some of them nothing more than candles set inside coloured glass, and the streets become rivers of flame and shadow. A masquerade ball unfolds in the great hall of a noble villa. Inside, chandeliers drip with wax and dancers glide across marble floors. The music is softer here, the games more delicate, but the thrill is the same. Two masked figures meet in a corner, a gloved hand touches a fan. A whispered name is given. Real or invented, who can say? For tonight, no one truly knows anyone, and that perhaps is the greatest intimacy of all. In the poorer quarters, the dancing continues in the streets. A fire is built, and around it masked figures leap and spin, their shadows flung tall against the walls. Somewhere, a storyteller begins to speak, not of saints or heroes, but of fools who become kings, and kings who become beasts. The crowd quiets, drawn close. In one tale, a baker's apprentice steals the mask of death and uses it to trick the world. In another, a saint removes his own heart and plants it in the ground where it grows into a tree of fire. These are stories told only at Carnival, too strange, too wild for any other time. Then comes the final act. At midnight in the central square, a great effigy is revealed. It is called Il Re di Carnevale, the King of Carnival. Made of wood and paper, dressed in jester's garb, it represents everything the festival has released. Laughter, lust, mockery, appetite, drums roll, torches rise, and then, with a cheer and a gasp, the effigy is set alight. Flames consume the painted face, sparks rush into the night sky. The people watch in silence now, their laughter spent, their eyes wide. It is beautiful, and it is over. Ashes fall like snow. In the coming days the city will change. The masks will be packed away, the stages dismantled. The friars will walk the streets with ashes for foreheads and words of repentance on their lips. The fast will begin, the music will quiet. But for now, the embers still glow. The people walk home slowly, their feet aching, their hearts full. Some carry their masks in hand, others still wear them, unwilling to let go just yet. In the next part of our journey, we will pass through great courts and castles, where nobility shaped festivals of their own, full of tournaments, banquets, and dangerous games of power wrapped in velvet and song. But tonight, let the sounds of Carnival echo just a little longer in your dreams. Let the mask remain. Let joy linger on your tongue like wine that refuses to fade. The moon hangs high over stone battlements and velvet-draped windows. Torches flicker along the parapets. Somewhere in the distance, a hunting horn sounds, low and clear, its note fading into the hush of midnight. We have arrived at the heart of noble power, the castle, and within its great halls, a different kind of festival stirs. This is no rustic revel, no street-born carnival. Here the festivities are composed, calculated, choreographed with precision. But do not be fooled by the elegance. Beneath the silk and steel, the laughter and lute music, something just as wild lives here. Ambition, longing, a hunger for display. Tonight, it is a feast day. Perhaps it is the wedding of a lord's daughter to a neighbouring duke. Perhaps a royal progress has brought the king himself within these walls. Or perhaps it is simply one of those sacred dates, Epiphany, Easter, All Hallows, that demands grandeur. Whatever the cause, the great hall is ablaze with light. Tapestries hang thick on the walls, woven with scenes of hunts, saints and battles. The scent of rosemary and roast boar drifts through the air, mingling with beeswax and sweat. Minstrels line the side of the hall, plucking at lutes and psalteries, their fingers moving in practiced rhythm. At the long tables, nobles in brocade and fur murmur behind silver goblets. Jewels flash at throats and wrists. Peacocks roasted with their feathers reattached sit beside dishes sculpted into dragons and castles. It is not just food, it is theatre, and it is power. Every dish served, every course presented reflects status. A lesser baron receives one trencher of venison. A favoured knight is offered sweetmeats wrapped in gold leaf. The highest-ranked guests are given a subtlety, a sugar sculpture shaped like a scene from scripture or fable, designed to dazzle, then vanish on the tongue. At the high table, the lord and lady sit, flanked by their heirs and honoured guests. Their smiles are serene, their posture perfect. But beneath the surface, every glance is weighed, every jest measured. An insult here could cost a marriage. A compliment there might win a border. And then, when the last course has been cleared and the last toast given, the hall transforms. Servants push the tables back. Musicians strike a brighter tune. A herald steps forward and declares the beginning of the masquerade. Yes, even here, even among lords and ladies, the mask has power. A golden lion prowls past a woman dressed in midnight blue, her mask shaped like a raven's beak. A knight in emerald green carries a dagger carved of bone. No one speaks names, not tonight. This is a night of illusion. The dances are formal, pavane, galliard, bassa dance, but the undercurrent is anything but tame. Every step, every turn is a test of wit, of poise, of desire. In the shadow of a pillar, a duchess whispers to a man she should not know. A squire, emboldened by anonymity, courts the daughter of a count. And in the gallery above, cloaked figures watch, some amused, some jealous, some plotting. Because even in celebration, the game of power never truly pauses. Later, a performance begins. A troupe of players brought in from a distant city unfurl a tale of betrayal and redemption, acted in verse and shadow. Their stage is a raised platform, their backdrop a painted sheet. The story may be biblical or drawn from ancient Rome, or perhaps twisted from some local scandal, thinly veiled. Laughter ripples through the room, but not all of it is light. And then comes the tournament. Not tonight, perhaps, but the next morning when the feast has passed and the guests linger. A challenge is issued in the name of honour. The field is prepared, banners flap in the wind, spectators fill the stands, trumpets blare. Two knights, clad in steel, ride out beneath the gaze of noblemen and ladies. They lower their lances, their horses thunder forward. The clash is real, the danger is real, bones break, blood spills. But it is spectacle, noble violence, wrapped in pageantry, sanctioned by tradition. The victor bows before the high table and receives his favour, a scarf, a ring, a smile. Sometimes the prize is nothing but a look from someone whose name cannot be spoken aloud. Sometimes it is everything. These festivals within the court serve many purposes. They entertain, yes, but they also instruct. Young heirs learn how to move, how to speak, how to impress. Alliances are tested, forged, broken. Rumours are planted like seeds. And beneath it all, the rhythm of the feast keeps time, steady and relentless. But it is not all schemes and pageantry. There are moments of softness, too. A servant stealing a dance when the nobles are distracted, a widow laughing for the first time in years, a child falling asleep beneath the table, a sugar star clutched in her hand. Even in these vaulted halls lit by chandeliers and filled with politics, the human heart finds room to breathe, to feel. And as the final embers of the celebration die out, the nobles retreat to their chambers, some alone, some not. The masks are set aside, the costumes unpinned. The walls seem taller again, the air heavier. But for a brief moment, they were not just lords and ladies. They were jesters and lovers, lions and birds, stars and shadows. In our next passage through the winding corridors of time, we will step outside once more, into the festivals of the marketplace, where merchants, travellers and townsfolk gather for fairs that last days, even weeks. A world of colour and noise, of bargains and wonders, of songs shouted over stalls piled high with spice and silk. But for now, let the velvet darkness wrap around you, let the echo of lute strings fade, and let dreams carry you through a hall of masks, where every face tells a story and every silence holds a secret. The morning arrives not with quiet, but with clamour, the steady hum of voices rising like birdsong, the clang of hammers on metal, the hiss of boiling pots, the distant cry of traders hawking wares. This is not the hush of the court or the intimacy of the village. This is the marketplace, the fairground, the living heart of commerce, laughter and wonder. We have stepped into the world of the medieval fair. It sprawls just outside the town walls, a great patchwork of tents, stalls, carts and raised wooden stages. Banners flap in the breeze, stitched with emblems of guilds and towns. The ground is packed firm by 1,000 footsteps. And above it all, a chorus of sound, horses whinnying, dogs barking, children squealing, drums pounding, swirls like smoke into the bright sky. Fairs in the medieval world are more than shopping events. They are calendars made real, time embodied in wooden cloth and noise. Many are held on saints' days or tied to the harvest. Some last just 3 days, others stretch into weeks. For rural folk, it is a rare chance to glimpse the wider world. For merchants, it is the lifeblood of their trade. And for everyone, it is a kind of theatre. A man in a long blue robe stands atop a crate, waving his arms like a windmill. "Rare spices from the Holy Land," he bellows. "Cinnamon to make your stew sing, pepper to cure your coughs, cardamom." to win your sweetheart's kiss. Beside him, a woman unfurls bolts of cloth, silks from the east, linens dyed deep with indigo. Her fingers move with a dancer's grace. She needn't speak, the colour does the talking. Children gather around a tooth puller with stained hands and a sack full of curious tools. He grins wide, revealing a jaw full of gleaming, unnatural teeth. "Watch this," he says, and yanks a tooth from a wincing farmer, raising it like a prize. The crowd gasps. Some cheer, others turn away. Not far off, a puppet stage springs to life. Painted figures dart back and forth, their wooden mouths snapping out insults and jokes. The tale today is one of a foolish knight and a clever fox. The children laugh, the adults too. They've heard the story before, but it never grows old. At the centre of the fair stands a tall, crooked pole. It is wrapped with streamers, feathers, tiny bells. Around its base, musicians gather, fiddlers, drummers, pipers. They strike up a tune fast and sharp. Dancers join in, clapping and stomping, skirts swirling, boots thudding. It is a chaos of movement, joy given form. Food is everywhere, meat pies, steaming and thick, wheels of cheese stacked like treasure, bowls of lentils seasoned with herbs, roasted apples dripping with honey, ale by the bucket, cider by the flask. The air smells like everything at once, sweet, sharp, smoky, pungent. It is overwhelming and glorious. But this fair, like all things medieval, is layered. For amid the laughter and trade, there are stories unfolding in quieter corners. In a shaded tent, a fortune-teller reads a soldier's palm. Her voice is low, her eyes sharp. She speaks of a long journey, a love that must be left behind. The soldier laughs, embarrassed, but does not pull his hand away. Near the outskirts, a friar preaches atop a barrel. His sermon is loud, filled with fire. "Repent," he cries. "The Lord sees all." Few stop to listen. Most offer him bread or coin and move on. They have heard it all before. A scribe, seated at a table with ink-stained fingers, writes letters for the illiterate. Love letters, confessions, contracts. His pen moves quickly, his face is unreadable, and in the farthest stalls, where the tents grow older, the shadows deeper, strange things are sold. A bottle said to hold the breath of a dying saint, a mirror that shows your true face, a feather from a griffin's wing. Of course, most are tricks, but some feel heavy in the hand, charged, forgotten by reason. These fairs are crossroads, not just of goods, but of people. Languages mingle here, French, German, Italian, Arabic, so do customs. A knight might trade for Turkish cloth, a Moorish merchant might sample northern cheese, a Romani woman might sing a song that no one understands, but all feel. Deals are struck, both spoken and silent. A basket of salt for a belt of silver, a kiss for a promise, a story for a night's lodging, and when the sun sinks low, the fair does not sleep. Torches are lit, shadows stretch long, the music changes, slower now, deeper. Dancers move closer, laughter grows more hushed, eyes meet in the firelight. A man with a painted mask begins to tell a story, not with words but with movement. A silent pantomime of love, betrayal and forgiveness. The crowd holds its breath, a child cries softly, an old man wipes his eyes. When he finishes, there is silence. Then applause, real and sudden like rain on a dry roof. Fairs are fleeting. By week's end, the stalls will vanish, the pole will be bare, the field will be empty again, save for a few ribbons caught in the grass. But their magic lingers. A girl who saw a dancing bear may dream of forests. A farmer who heard a travelling song might hum it as he ploughs. A young man who kissed a stranger beneath a lantern may never forget her face. In our next journey, we will follow the jesters and fools, those wandering souls who stitched laughter into the very fabric of the Middle Ages. They walked the fine line between truth and ridicule, between danger and delight. Their words made kings blush and peasants cheer. But for now, let the music of the fair fade gently. Let the colours soften into memory. Let the scent of cinnamon and smoke drift into your dreams. The fair is over for the night, but its echoes still dance behind your closed eyes. The road stretches out beneath a pale morning sky, soft with mist and dew. It winds through valleys and past stone bridges, through sleepy hamlets and wide fields where oxen move slowly beneath the yoke. Along this road walks a man in motley, his coat patched with every colour, bells at his knees, a carved stick swinging loosely from one hand. His name changes from town to town. Some call him fool, some jester. Others call him nothing at all, only smile as he passes and wait for the story he always brings. He is one of many. In this chapter of festival life, we follow the ones who never stayed still, the jesters, minstrels, tumblers, and fools who wandered from castle to fairground, from roadside inn to royal court, weaving laughter and chaos into the solemn cloth of medieval life. They were the festival made flesh. Wherever they went, the air changed, conversation lifted, shoulders relaxed. But there was something more than comedy in them, something older. Tricksters, prophets, mirrors of men's vanities, jesters walked a narrow road between entertainment and unsettling truth. This morning our jester approaches a village preparing for its midsummer feast. Ribbons hang from every doorway. Flowers crown the maypole. Bread is being baked, spiced with thyme and caraway. A boy spots the jester first, racing ahead to tell the others. Soon, a small crowd gathers. He begins without words. A stumble, a pratfall, a squeal like a pig. Laughter bursts from the children, then from the adults. He juggles apples, one of which he takes an enormous bite from mid-arc. He pulls a chicken from a sack and introduces it as his mother-in-law. He mocks the village priest's wide hat. He mimics the Lord's gate with exaggerated pomp. But then, suddenly, his tone shifts. He begins to sing, low, rough, beautiful. A song about a man who wears a crown of feathers and dances with ghosts. The laughter stills. The villagers listen. Some frown, some tilt their heads, wondering what the story means. That was the power of the fool. He could speak what others could not. Wrapped in nonsense and rhyme, he could pierce the thickest silence. In times of war, he could cry for peace. In times of peace, he could whisper warnings. His truths were twisted like vines, but they struck deep. In royal courts, fools were more than clowns. They were counsellors cloaked in absurdity. A king might trust no one but the fool, because only the fool had no ambition. Only the fool could speak freely and not be punished, provided he wore a grin when he did. Some carried official titles: court jester, king's fool. They were paid, fed, and protected. Others travelled as vagrants, surviving on coin tossed after a clever verse or a daring stunt. Some were geniuses of wit. Others were what we might now call touched, simple-minded or strange, yet gifted in ways others couldn't explain. And there were women too. Fools in skirts, jestresses with sharp tongues and sharper eyes. They were rare, but unforgettable. A lady in waiting by day, a singer of scandal by night. She might wear a mask painted with tears or none at all, letting her voice do the work. During festivals, the fools were everywhere. At the Feast of Fools, one of the wildest, most subversive celebrations in the medieval calendar, they ruled. Held usually around the New Year in the cold, dark days between seasons, the Feast of Fools flipped the world upside down. Priests dressed as animals, choir boys wore their robes backward. A bishop of fools was elected, sometimes a peasant, sometimes a stable boy, and he sat upon the bishop's throne, issuing mock decrees and leading mock sermons. The jester was their guide through this inversion. He danced down the nave of the church, ringing his bells. He kissed statues, blew raspberries at relics, and cackled all the while. No blasphemy was punished, not on this day. It was too wild, too sacred in its disorder. Because even disorder has meaning. The fools reminded people that the world was not fixed, that kings could be mocked, that saints could laugh, that sorrow could turn, just for a moment, into celebration. Their tricks were more than tricks. Their songs were more than songs, and sometimes the fool carried the greatest wisdom. In one tale, a fool follows a queen through war and exile, always smiling, always singing. She mocks him, relies on him, forgets him. Years later, when she returns to power, it is the fool who saves her from a plot, not with a sword, but with a riddle. In another, a fool lives in a tower, pretending to be mad. Only after his death do the monks discover the scrolls he wrote, full of visions, poetry, and secret knowledge. Such tales were told and retold across the lands, embroidered with fancy, but rooted in truth. The fool was never just a fool. As the day draws to a close, our jester in motley finishes his show with a trick. He balances a stool on his chin, juggles 3 onions, and sings a song about a fish who wanted to be a man. When he bows, the crowd throws coins and bread. A girl hands him a flower. A man claps him on the shoulder. He leaves quietly as always. The road waits. So do the next village, the next feast, the next child who has never heard a joke spun into a prayer. In the next chapter, we will turn to a darker celebration, one held not in meadows or great halls, but in graveyards and chapels. A festival of the dead. of skulls and candles, where people danced with death and whispered to bones. But tonight, let the jester's laugh echo softly behind your thoughts. Let the bells on his knees ring once more as you drift into sleep. For in the world of festivals, even the fool wears a crown, if only for a day. The world has grown quiet. The summer fields lie hushed beneath a low grey sky, and the last of the leaves skitter along the cobbled paths like shy ghosts. Somewhere a bell tolls, not in joy this time, but in remembrance. And in every town and village, from the highest cathedral to the smallest parish church, people begin to gather with candles in hand and prayers on their tongues. It is the festival of the dead. All Hallows, All Souls, the days of the departed, long before lanterns carved into grinning faces, long before the flickering commercial shadows of modern days, the medieval peoples knew well the closeness of death. They saw it daily, in sickness, in famine, in childbirth, in war, and so they did not turn away. They greeted it, spoke to it, and once each year invited it to walk among them. On the eve of All Saints' Day, the people lit fires along the roadsides and set lanterns in their windows. The idea was not to frighten the dead, but to guide them. These lights were not warding spells, they were invitations. Come in, beloved. Rest here, you are not forgotten. Children were taught to leave out bits of bread, apples, a sip of wine. The offerings were small, but meaningful. A grandmother's favourite cake placed beside the hearth, a toy once loved by a lost sibling. These were called soul tokens, gifts for the spirits returning from the other side. The church bells tolled low and slow all night, and in the graveyards people gathered with care. They brought candles and garlands of herbs. Some wept, some laughed, some simply sat in silence. In many places, a strange custom took root. The danse macabre, the dance of death. It was not a festival in the jubilant sense, but it was theatrical, communal, unforgettable. In village squares and churchyards, actors dressed in skeletal garb led processions that twisted through the streets. Sometimes they played flutes made of bone, sometimes they carried hourglasses, coffins, or scythes. They danced with the living. A skeleton would approach a nobleman, bow deeply and waltz him away. Another might take the hand of a young bride, or a merchant counting his coins, or a priest mid-sermon. The message was clear: death takes all. It sounds grim perhaps, but it was not meant to terrify. It was meant to equalise, to remind the rich and the poor, the old and the young, that they shared the same end and therefore the same worth. And within that reminder, strangely, was comfort. In some towns, masked figures dressed as the dead would walk among the crowd, whispering names of those long gone. A game, perhaps, a rite. The people would reply, not with fear, but with greetings. Welcome, Uncle Matthias. Good evening, Sister Anne. Even the dead, after all, deserved to be remembered. Monasteries often prepared soul cakes, small round buns flavoured with spices, marked with a cross on top. Children would go door to door, offering prayers in exchange for them. A soul cake, a soul cake. Have mercy on all Christian souls for a soul cake. Their voices would carry through the fog, and from each home a warm treat would be offered, along with whispered thanks. And always there was the tolling of bells. Each chime was said to release a soul from purgatory, lifting them closer to peace. Families gave coins to the church to ensure the ringing, a son paying for his father, a widow for her lost love. As midnight drew close, the living and the dead drew closer still. In some places, an empty chair was left at the table, a plate filled and untouched. In others, the family would dine in silence, every bite a tribute. If a wind moved through the room, someone might murmur, "She's here," and no one would question it. There were darker customs too. In certain parts of Europe, masked processions called the Black Parade moved through towns, chanting in Latin, faces hidden beneath skulls or veils. They carried black candles, burned only once a year, and sang of the end of days. These processions were unsettling, but necessary. A reminder not just of death, but of repentance. Yet amidst all this solemnity, there was also beauty. A young boy lighting a candle for a sister he never knew. A crone stroking the name on a moss-covered grave, humming the lullaby she once sang to the child now beneath it. A church choir singing Dies Irae, so softly that even the birds in the rafters fell silent. And above all, the feeling, unmistakable, that for one night, the veil between the worlds was thinner than breath. By morning, the candles had burned low. The offerings had been taken by wind or foxes. The soul cakes were eaten, the masks were hung away, but in every heart something lingered. Not fear, not sorrow, connection. The understanding that the dead were not gone, merely elsewhere. And that once a year they were close enough to hear a whispered memory, close enough to warm their ghostly hands at a living fire. In the next chapter we will rise with the sun and follow a different kind of celebration, one of light and winter, of pageants and stars, when entire towns became living nativity scenes and miracles were reenacted in lantern glow. But for now, let the silence embrace you. Let the flicker of candlelight cast gentle shadows across your dreams. The dead have danced and returned to rest, and the living sleep, remembering. The chill of winter settles like lace upon the rooftops, tracing every corner with frost. Icicles hang from timbered eaves. The rivers have slowed, dark and glassy. And yet, despite the hush, there is a light kindling across the medieval town, not of fire alone, but of something older, deeper, and full of wonder. It is the season of miracle plays. From the shortest day of the year and onward through the biting cold of December and January, towns and villages across Christendom come alive, not with war or labour, but with stories, not whispered in candlelit rooms or scribbled in books, but told aloud, on stage, in the streets, in barns and chapels, where even the animals seem to listen. The miracle play was the festival of winter, and in the heart of this season stood the greatest story of all, the Nativity. In some towns, the preparations began weeks in advance. Local guilds took charge. The weavers would handle costumes, the carpenters the sets, the bakers the post-performance feast. A stage would be built in the town square, wooden and raised, with painted backdrops showing desert hills, golden stars and lowly stables. The play itself was not read, few could read. It was spoken, sung, lived. And so, on a night lit only by torches and starlight, the people would gather, bundled in wool and hope, their breath curling in clouds. Children sat on parents' laps, dogs lay at their feet, bells chimed softly in the distance. Then came the first voice. In the beginning. And the story unfolded. Mary, veiled in blue, moved slowly across the stage. Joseph, kind and uncertain, led a donkey made of wood and cloth. The innkeeper waved them away with exaggerated gestures. The audience hissed and chuckled. The angels arrived in shimmering robes stitched with silver thread. Shepherds rubbed their eyes, astonished, and somewhere above, a golden star was slowly lowered on a wire, its paper edges catching the firelight. The Christ child was played by a real infant when possible, or by a bundle wrapped tight and reverent. A lullaby was sung, soft and trembling, and even the rowdiest children fell still. Then came the Magi, kings from distant lands wearing cloaks of velvet and bearing gifts crafted by local hands. A jar of honey stood in for frankincense, a wooden box for gold, a handful of cloves for myrrh. The people knew the story well, but each year it felt new, alive. And it didn't with the manger. The miracle plays told other tales too, of saints who healed with a glance, of martyrs who sang as the flames rose, of angels who wrestled demons in plain sight. In one town, St. Nicholas came not with reindeer, but with stern eyes and a ledger. He weighed the souls of the children with dramatic flair, rewarding the honest and scolding the lazy. In another, St. George slew the dragon with a wooden sword, while a costumed beast writhed and roared to the delight of the crowd. It was theatre, yes, but it was also teaching. For most villagers, this was how they came to know their faith, through laughter, through tears, through stories that danced in firelight and lodged deep in memory. And for the players, it was no small task. To play an angel was an honour. To play the Virgin required grace. To play Herod, the villain king, was a role of wicked delight. He would stomp and bellow and threaten the innocent, only to be booed and chased by the smallest children at the play's end. Some performances were simple, a sheet strung across a stable door, a few painted props. Others were grander, with entire pageant wagons rolled through town, each one telling a different scene. These wagons formed a mobile theatre, stopping at key corners while the audience followed like pilgrims, and always there was music. Flutes, lutes and voices in harmony. The hymns were old, older than memory, but they swelled from young mouths and filled the night like breath fills the lungs. In the wealthier towns, nobles sat wrapped in furs, nodding with polite applause. In poorer places, the crowd stood shoulder to shoulder, steaming with warmth and joy. but everywhere the wonder was the same. This was not mere entertainment. It was a bridge between the sacred and the ordinary, the divine and the muddy ground. A woman spinning wool by day might become an angel by night. A blacksmith might deliver the words of St. Peter with fire still clinging to his fingers. And when the performance ended, there was always silence, a long, soft silence. Then applause, not thunderous, but heartfelt, the kind that feels like snow falling, the kind that carries gratitude too big for words. Afterward, the people returned to their homes. Some walked with candles, singing softly. Others hurried to the warmth of hearths and shared bread dipped in wine. Children were tucked into straw beds with stars in their eyes, and the town, for all its aches and fears, seemed to glow from within. The miracle play had done its work. It had reminded them, not only of birth and grace, but of how stories make us whole. How the act of gathering to witness something beautiful, even just for an hour, binds hearts across class, across sorrow, across time. In the next chapter of our tale, we will follow a stranger celebration still, one of animals and spirits, of masked beasts roaming the countryside, and villages where winter meant more than cold. It meant transformation. But tonight, let the echoes of the angel's hymn rest gently on your ears. Let the flicker of torchlight dance behind your eyelids. And let the story, that oldest story, wrap itself around you like a blanket spun from starlight and song. The wind howls low through the valleys, curling around chimney tops and rattling wooden shutters. Snow lies heavy on the thatched roofs, and the trees stand bare and watchful, their branches like dark fingers against the moonlit sky. Winter has dug in its heels, deep and wide. But in certain corners of the medieval countryside, something stirs. It does not come with trumpets or choirs. It comes with bells on twisted limbs, with masks of fur and horn. With laughter and growls and voices so old they barely sound human. It is the season of the wild ones. In the coldest depths of winter, when the nights are longest and the world feels caught in a breathless pause, villages across Europe gave birth to some of their strangest and most haunting festivals. They were not holy days. They were not sanctioned by church or court. They were older than doctrine and wilder than scripture. They were transformations. And they began with the masks, not the elegant, painted masks of courtly dance. These were crude things, sewn from animal skins, carved from wood, adorned with feathers, bones and soot. Some were shaped like beasts, boars, wolves, stags, others like twisted men with curling tongues and staring eyes. They hung in barns through the year, gathering dust and waiting. Then came the night. The people gathered in secret places, sometimes in the forest, sometimes in a hollow or by a frozen stream. A fire would be lit, and around it the masked ones would assemble. They came from the village, but none would say who. Once the mask was donned, the person vanished. What remained was creature, legend, spirit. They called them many names. In the Alps, Perchten, some beautiful, some hideous. In the Slavic lands, Koledari. In German forests, Krampus walked, dragging chains and rattling sticks. Each had its own shape, its own story. But they shared a common soul, wildness. The procession would begin at dusk. Torchbearers led the way, their flames casting enormous shadows. Behind them came the masked figures, some on stilts, others hunched low. They moved through the village, not in silence, but with a cacophony of drums, bells and horns. The noise was meant to wake the earth, to drive away spirits of rot and cold, to remind the world that life still moved beneath the snow. And the people, they welcomed the chaos. Doors were flung open, the masked ones entered homes, banging pots, tossing straw, stealing sausages from hooks. They mocked the master of the house, teased the children, overturned stools, but they were also bearers of blessing. They scattered grain, whispered charms, left behind tokens carved from wood or baked from dark rye. In some regions, a battle would be staged, winter versus spring. Two masked figures, one cloaked in white, the other in green, would duel with sticks or riddles or dance. Spring always lost at first. It had to. But in the end, by fire or song, it rose again, a promise. In the Low Countries, the tradition of guising took hold. Groups of masked youths going door to door, singing songs and demanding gifts. If you don't give, we'll bring mischief, they'd chant. It was part performance, part ritual. Every song sung was a charm against misfortune, and always there was the animal. A great horse made from wood and cloth, or a bear stitched from fur and straw, or a long, sinuous dragon of painted paper and bone. It would wind its way through the streets, snapping its jaws, led by a guide who kept it tethered. Barely. Children screamed and laughed. Adults bowed as it passed. What was it, this beast? A symbol? A spirit? A memory of gods long vanished? No one knew. Or rather, everyone knew, but differently. To the old widow, it was a charm against hunger. To the hunter, a symbol of the forest's soul. To the priest, a superstition best ignored. But to the children, it was magic, pure and undeniable. The feast that followed was rough but warm. Stews thick with lentils and root vegetables, bread dark and heavy, ale brewed strong. The masked ones would eat in silence, still cloaked, never removing their disguises. To do so would be to break the spell. And when the fire burned low and the last song was sung, they vanished. Some walked into the woods, others slipped into barns. No one watched too closely. By dawn, the masks would be back in their hiding places. The villagers would return to their chores. But something had shifted. The wildness had been let out, just for a night. The world reminded that it was not yet tamed. These winter festivals were never written down in scrolls or lore. They were carried in breath, in bone, in tradition passed from lips to ears in kitchens and fields. They changed shape with time and place, but their heart remained the same: transformation. In a season of stillness, they moved. In a world of order, they disrupted. And in doing so, they made space for the year to begin again. In the next chapter of our wandering tale, we'll return to the high days of spring, where mock kings are crowned, laughter becomes law, and the world turns itself inside out in the mad joy of misrule. But for now, close your eyes and imagine the crunch of snow underfoot, the rattle of bells in the night, and a mask staring back from the edge of the firelight. Not cruel, not kind, just ancient, just watching, just waiting for its time to return. The snow begins to melt, not all at once, but in drips and whispers. Icicles weep slowly in the daylight. The earth, softening beneath booted feet, exhales its first breath of spring. Buds swell on bare branches, though no flowers yet dare bloom. But the people know. They know it is coming. And with it comes a very particular kind of madness. Delightful, raucous, upside down. A time when cobbled streets become courts, beggars wear crowns, and all the old rules tumble down like leaves in wind. It is the Festival of Fools. This celebration, held in various forms across Europe, often in early spring or just after the turn of the year, was not holy. It was not solemn. It was not safe. It was instead a jubilant inversion, a carnival of misrule where laughter reigned and order took a bow. In some cities, it began at the cathedral. Yes, at the cathedral. The very seat of authority and reverence became, for one outrageous day, a theatre of absurdity. The clergy themselves were the actors. One among them, often the youngest or the loudest, was chosen as the fool bishop or boy pope. He was dressed in mock vestments stitched from rags and ribbons, placed on a throne made of barrels, and paraded through the streets like a saint of nonsense. Behind him came the clergy choir, but not singing hymns, no. They sang gibberish, squawked like birds, bleated like goats. Incense was replaced with cheese rinds. Candles dripped tallow onto potatoes carved into holy shapes. The procession wound through the city, stopping at taverns where they would bless the ale and curse the bread, and every tavern keeper would fall to his knees in mock piety. It was chaos with choreography. Meanwhile, in the town squares, the people prepared for their own version of the feast. Costumes were key, the more ridiculous, the better. A washerwoman might dress as a knight, armour made from baking tins. A butcher might don a bishop's hat, swinging sausages like a sceptre. The line between citizen and actor dissolved. Everyone became part of the play. And central to it all was the crowning of the Lord of Misrule. He could be anyone, a stable boy, a chimney sweep, a man too fond of drink, or a woman with a sharp tongue and no title. For one day they were ruler of all, seated on a cart made into a throne, paraded through the streets with bells and trumpets, given a court of fools and a guard of drunkards. They issued laws. All hats must be worn backward. All dogs must be greeted with a bow. Anyone found sober must be dunked in a barrel. And the people obeyed. For this was their world now, a world of reversal. A world where the rich were mocked, the priests teased, the rules made rubber. It was a festival that let off steam, yes. But more than that, It offered a brief and brilliant glimpse of what freedom might feel like. Even punishments were turned to play. A court might be held where citizens were charged with crimes like excessive seriousness or hoarding laughter. The accused would be tried by a jury of masked fools and sentenced to harmless but embarrassing acts, singing a love song to a chicken, hopping on one foot while reciting psalms, wearing a beard of cabbage leaves. Music was constant. Drums beaten with spoons, flutes carved from carrot stalks, chants that looped endlessly, infectiously, until the very air seemed drunk with rhythm. Some danced for hours. Others fell asleep standing, swaying in place like weary saints. And amid all the jest, the drink flowed. Mead, ale, cider, wine, poured from pitchers, sloshed from barrels, sipped from horns. The taverns did not close, the laughter did not stop. Even as night fell, torches kept the glow alive, and the songs turned from silly to sweet, then back again to absurd. Yet, as with all festivals, the end always came. The Lord of Misrule was gently dethroned, his sceptre returned to the butcher's hook or the broomstick it came from. The borrowed robes were shed, the masks came off, and the city, suddenly, almost eerily, returned to its senses. The streets were cleaned, the cheese-laced incense swept from the cathedral. The priests resumed their solemn duties, some with secret smiles still twitching at the corners of their mouths. And the people? They remembered. They remembered how it felt to laugh without permission, to bend the rules, to be someone, anyone else, just for a day. Because that is what the Festival of Fools gave them. Not just entertainment, but permission. To play, to mock, to question, to imagine, even in jest, a world turned upside down, and to wonder, quietly, if it might not be so bad. In our next chapter, we will follow the path of pilgrims, where festival meets faith, and the journey itself becomes a kind of celebration, dusty, dangerous, filled with song and strangeness. But for now, let the laughter echo in your mind like bells across water. Let the mock coronation linger, the silly laws replay in dreams. For though the world has righted itself, something has shifted, and the fool, having spoken, leaves behind a truth no king would dare say aloud. The road winds on, no longer the stage of jesters or the parade of fools. It stretches into the far horizon, lined with hedgerows and ancient trees. Beneath the early spring sun, the earth begins to awaken, and with it, footsteps begin to echo, steady, slow, purposeful. Pilgrims. They walk in twos and threes, sometimes alone, sometimes in crowds 100 deep. Some carry staffs, others wear broad-brimmed hats adorned with scallop shells. Dust clings to their cloaks, and their shoes are worn soft. They do not laugh often, but they do sing. And strangely, their journey is a festival too. Not in the way of pageants or wine-splashed joy, but in the rhythm of motion, of shared breath and blisters, of sacred intention wrapped in song and sweat. For in the medieval world, the pilgrimage was a celebration of the soul, a moving theatre of faith, penance, hope, and humanity. The destinations were many. Some walked to Canterbury, to kneel where St. Thomas's blood once stained the floor. Others journeyed to Santiago de Compostela in distant Spain, chasing the whispered glow of St. James's relics. A few dared even further, to Rome, to Jerusalem, seeking absolution in distant dust. But no matter the length of the path, the pattern was familiar. The morning began with prayers, simple, murmured words, often led by the oldest among them. Then came the walking, mile after mile, through farmland, woods, across bridges that groaned with age. When the sun was kind, they walked in peace. When it burned or poured or snowed, they pressed on still. Along the way, a strange camaraderie formed. Nobles walked beside farmers. A widow might share a crust of bread with a knight. A blind man sang psalms as he leaned on the shoulder of a laughing boy. Names faded, histories blurred. They were pilgrims now, and that was all that mattered. Each town they passed became a stage of sorts. The villagers watched their dusty procession with curiosity and reverence. Some offered food or alms, others asked for prayers. Inns and churches opened their doors, offering shelter and soup. And in the quiet hours of the evening, when cloaks were hung to dry and aching feet were rubbed with lavender oil, stories were told. Always stories of miracles witnessed, of sins confessed, of dreams that led them here. A mother praying for her son to return from war. A thief seeking to outrun his past. A scholar chasing a vision glimpsed in a book too ancient to trust. Each story folded into the others, like candles lit in sequence, forming a path of light. And the songs. Pilgrims sang not for applause, but to ease the miles, to soothe the heart, to remind one another of the sacred within the journey. Some songs were in Latin, others in tongues thick with local dialect. They sang of saints and rivers, of trials and graces. And sometimes they sang just for the joy of it, bawdy verses that made the younger ones blush and the elders cackle behind their hands. At major waypoints, small festivals greeted them, shrines wrapped in garlands, springs said to heal the sick, crossroads where minstrels waited with lutes, trading songs for coins. Here, the sacred and the earthly danced together, a monk selling prayer tokens beside a woman frying honey cakes, a boy reenacting the martyrdom of Saint Sebastian with theatrical groans while his sister passed around a hat for offerings, and then, once again, they walked. Some faltered, illness struck, a fever, a twisted ankle, a heart that simply could not carry the weight of its burden. Those who stopped were mourned and prayed over, then carried forward in story. Because pilgrimage was not just about arrival, it was about becoming. Along the way, pride was peeled away. Vanity cracked like dry mud. Even the stubborn learned to ask for help. Even the angry found moments of stillness. Even the hopeless sometimes found light. And at last, after days or weeks or months, the destination rose on the horizon. Canterbury's towers, Compostella's archways, the shining bones of a saint resting in jewelled splendour. The pilgrims did not cheer, they knelt. Some wept, some laughed softly, some simply sat, exhausted, letting the hush of the sacred wrap around them. They lit candles, they kissed relics, they gave thanks, and then, in time, they turned and walked home. Some returned changed, others returned quietly, as if the journey had pressed its mark somewhere deeper than skin, and still others did not return at all. For that too was part of the pilgrimage, the acceptance of mystery. In the next passage of our wandering tale, we will find ourselves beneath the summer sun once more, where fields bloom gold and entire villages dance the harvest into being. A celebration of grain and sweat, of fullness before the fall. But for now, listen to the quiet shuffle of many feet. Feel the press of tired bodies huddled close for warmth. And know that somewhere down a dusty road between two towns you've never seen, someone is walking still, towards something sacred, singing softly in the dawn. The sun hangs heavy in the sky, golden and ripe, casting long shadows over fields thick with swaying grain. Cicadas sing in the hedgerows, and the breeze carries with it the scent of earth and sweat and hay. It is late summer now, the season of harvest, and across the medieval countryside, bells ring not for battle nor for prayer, but for celebration. The harvest festival has begun. For months the people have toiled, bending, lifting, threshing, binding. The work was brutal, ceaseless and necessary. The grain was life itself, wheat for bread, barley for ale, rye for winter's stores. Every stalk gathered was a day survived. Every sheaf stacked in the barn was a promise against the cold to come. But now the barns are full, the last bundles tied, the fields bare and golden stubbled, the tools cleaned and hung, and the people, weary, sunburnt and aching, prepare to rejoice. It begins with a procession. The first sheaf of grain, cut before all others, is saved and dressed. It is tied with ribbons, crowned with flowers, and sometimes shaped into a figure, the corn maiden or the grain father. It represents the spirit of the field, the essence of the harvest. It is carried through the village on a cart or a litter of boughs, borne high with reverence, as if it were a saint. Behind it come the people, women with garlands in their hair, children holding lanterns made from hollowed turnips, men wearing belts of plaited straw. Musicians lead the way, fiddlers, drummers, pipe players, their tunes light, lilting, full of sun. The route weaves through the village and out again into the fields. At every boundary stone, the procession pauses. There, a toast is made, not just to the harvest, but to the land itself. Wine is poured onto the soil, a crust of bread is buried beneath a tree. The land has given, and now it is given to in return. Then come the games. Archery contests are held beneath the oaks, tug-of-war across the stream, races through the meadows, barefoot and breathless. The laughter is loud, easy. The children shriek with delight. Even the elders smile, their faces softened by memory. In the village square, long tables are set. They groan beneath the weight of food. Rich, real food, not the thin soups and dried grains of lean times. There is roasted meat dripping with fat, fresh cheeses wrapped in herbs. pies bursting with fruit, loaves of bread still warm from the ovens, their crusts cracked and golden. Ale flows freely, thick and sweet. Cider, pressed just days before, sings on the tongue. Cups are never empty. Jugs are passed without question. It is a feast not of gluttony, but of gratitude. To eat well is to honour the work done. To drink deeply is to bless the hands that bled for the barley. As night falls, the fire is lit, a great bonfire, piled high with wood and straw and the broken handles of worn-out tools. Sparks rise into the dusk, joining the stars one by one. Around it the people dance. Not the solemn dances of court, but the rough, joyous, spinning steps of those who know the rhythm of the earth. Hands clasped, feet stomping, bodies leaning and laughing and letting go. Stories are told, old ones, about giants who guard the grain or spirits who hide in the sheaves. New ones too, about the farmer who saw a fairy at the edge of the field, or the miller's boy who kissed the mayor's daughter and lived to tell of it. Sometimes a mass passed around, made of leaves or bark or stitched straw. Whoever wears it becomes the harvest lord or lady, a figure of mischief and mystery. They can demand a song or a dance or a kiss. They can bless or curse in jest, and all must obey, for just one night. In the corner of the square, a quiet ritual unfolds. The first loaf baked from the year's flour is broken. Half is offered to the fire, the other half is passed, piece by piece, from hand to hand. No one eats it alone, it belongs to all. And later still, when the youngest have fallen asleep and the oldest have retired, when the fire burns low and only the brave or the restless remain, the festival takes on a softer tone. Lovers wander into the fields. Songs grow slower, sweeter. Someone plays a melody that sounds like memory itself. A girl cries for no reason and her friend wraps an arm around her shoulders. A man stares into the embers and sees for a moment his father's hands tying wheat. There is grief here too, always. For those who did not make it through the year, for the fields lost to storm or blight, for the knowledge that after harvest comes winter. But that too is part of the festival, to feel everything at once, joy, sorrow, relief, fear, and to honour it with bread and fire and dance. In the next chapter of our story, we will wander into the realm of saints and relics, where holy bones are carried through the streets, miracles are prayed for aloud, and faith becomes a celebration shared by thousands. But for now, let the warmth of the harvest fire settle in your bones. Let the scent of bread and ale linger in the air around you, and let your spirit rest, not in silence, but in the deep, glowing hum of gratitude, for the fields have given, and so have you. The morning mist clings to the stones of the chapel, and the hush of early prayer drifts like incense through narrow streets. Bells begin to toll, not with the urgency of alarm, but with rhythm, with grace. From distant corners of the town, doors open, footsteps echo, voices murmur. They are gathering. Today, the saint walks. It is a feast day unlike the others, not one of masks or laughter or earthy delight, but of reverence dressed in gold. A celebration of a life once lived in devotion, now lifted beyond the mortal veil. And though solemn in its beginning, it too becomes a festival, rich, radiant and full of longing. At the heart of it all, the relic. Perhaps it is a finger curled in eternal repose, a skull polished by centuries of prayer, a scrap of cloth said to have brushed a holy cheek, carried in a reliquary of silver or gilded oak, wrapped in velvet, guarded by priests and watched by all. The people line the streets before the procession begins. Some kneel in silence. Others clutch beads, lips moving in quiet rhythm. Children sit on their fathers' shoulders, wide-eyed. The air is thick with expectation, not theatrical, but spiritual, as if the saint themselves might step out of the reliquary and walk barefoot among them. Then comes the chant, low at first, then swelling, a hymn sung in Latin, known by heart though not understood. It rises from the mouths of monks and spills into the crowd, wrapping them in harmony and history. The relic is lifted high. Bells ring again, this time faster, jubilant. The procession begins. It moves slowly. Priests in crimson and gold, acolytes with incense, swinging their censers in wide arcs. The reliquary itself, borne by chosen men with bowed heads and steady steps. Behind them, the banners of guilds flutter in the breeze, each one bearing its symbol, its saint, its hope. And behind them, the people. Thousands, sometimes more, all walking the same path. From the cathedral steps down the winding main road, past fountains and shops, through arches and marketplaces. The town becomes sacred ground, even the cobbles seem to glow. From windows above, petals are thrown, lilies, roses, herbs plucked from gardens at dawn. They rain gently down upon the procession, caught in beards and curls, trampled beneath solemn feet. It is a gesture of honour, of beauty, of belief. And then in the town square, the miracle play begins. Actors step forward in simple robes, faces lit by the morning sun. They perform the story of the saint, not with pomp, but with love. The martyrdom, the healing, the vision, the flight from temptation, each moment drawn out in gesture, in verse, in silence. Even the children watch without fidgeting. It is as if time holds its breath. A woman weeps when the blind man is made to see. A man grips his brother's hand as the leper is embraced by the saint. And when the play ends, there is no applause, only bowed heads and quiet awe. Later, in the churchyard, offerings are made, coins dropped into a wooden bowl, candles lit one by one until the chapel glows like a lantern. Crutches left behind, carefully laid against the stone, testaments to prayers answered or hoped for still. Some bring small bottles of water to be blessed, others offer loaves of bread, inscribed with the saint's initials. These are taken home, sliced thin and shared with family. It is believed they carry protection, healing, the taste of the divine. The festival continues into evening. Choirs sing from balconies. Monks tell stories of other saints, other miracles, their voices soft and even. A boy writes a prayer on a scrap of parchment and hides it beneath a statue. A girl dips her fingers in holy water and touches her heart, her eyes, her lips. And then come the quiet miracles. A man with trembling hands stops shaking just for a moment. A child, silent for weeks, whispers a name. A woman burdened with grief finds, if not joy, at least peace. They are not seen by all, they are not recorded, but they are felt. And for those who believe, that is enough. As the final procession winds its way back to the cathedral, the sun begins to set, the sky glows pink and gold, the relic is returned to its resting place, wrapped once more in cloth and reverence. But something has changed. The town is not the same as it was at dawn, for today the saint walked, and wherever they passed, the dust of centuries lifted, and the air shimmered with the weight of grace. In the next chapter, we shall journey to the shores where the sea meets festival, to ports and fishing villages where salt and celebration mingle, and where ships are blessed and waves carry songs into the open wind. But for now, let the final hymn fade. Let the bells ring out once more, clear and slow, and let your breath settle like incense in a quiet chapel, warm with candlelight and memory. The saint has passed, the festival ends, but the blessing lingers. The gulls cry overhead, dipping and wheeling in the salt bright air. Nets hang from wooden poles, drying in the afternoon sun. Along the harbour walls, men mend sails with calloused fingers, and women scrub wooden tubs beneath hanging strings of fish. The sea breathes in long, slow sighs against the rocks, and the scent of brine clings to every stone, every shirt, every breath. This is the coast, a place where wind and tide rule, where the line between life and loss is written in waves. And here, too, the festival comes. It is not wrapped in silk, nor gilded in gold, but in oilskin and song. It begins not with a trumpet, but with a bell, a ship's bell struck by the harbour master at dawn, echoing out across the quiet surf. Today the sea is to be blessed. In many coastal towns, the festival of the sea, or the blessing of the fleet, marked the turning of the season, the beginning of the dangerous months of long fishing voyages. It was part prayer, part parade, and part solemn pact between man and ocean. At first light, the harbour awakens. Boats are scrubbed until their hulls shine. Masts are dressed in ribbons and painted cloth. Icons of saints, St. Nicholas, St. Brendan, St. Elmo, are lashed to the bows with care. Some captains place coins beneath their sails. Others carve charms into the wood, names, prayers, warnings. The townspeople gather near the water. They bring baskets of herbs, rosemary, sage, fennel, to toss into the sea. The children are given small wooden boats to float as offerings. The old women sit with rosaries wound through their fingers, their eyes fixed on the horizon as if watching for a sign. At mid-morning, the procession begins. The priest, barefoot, robe hemmed in salt, walks down to the water's edge. In one hand, he carries a crucifix. In the other, a brass vessel filled with holy water. He chants softly, invoking the saints of wind and sea, asking their protection over every soul who dares the waves. Then, one by one, he blesses the boats. flicks of water, murmured Latin, the sign of the cross drawn against the salt-worn wood. The crews bow their heads. Some whisper names, sons lost, fathers gone, brothers still out beyond the blue. When the last boat has been touched by the rite, the priest turns to the sea and speaks the oldest prayer, "Deliver us from the deep." And with that, the celebration begins. Music swells from the quay, fiddles, tambourines, the deep, steady thrum of a drum. Vendors set up stalls selling fried eels, flatbread, salted cod soaked in herbs and lemon. Jugs of wine pass from hand to hand. The laughter is not light, but full. It rises like a wave and crashes like one too. Dances are held on the docks. Bare feet on wet planks. Skirts lifted above ankles. A circle forms, then two, then more. Old sailors with stiff knees and silver hair clap to the rhythm. Young lovers spin faster than the wind. Children run with paper fish on strings, their feet slapping the stone. In the church, a wooden model ship is hung from the rafters. Beneath it, candles are lit for every soul taken by the sea. The names are spoken aloud, not with tears, not always, but with reverence, with memory. With the strength of those who've learned that grief and joy walk hand in hand, and somewhere on the outskirts, away from the crowd, a quiet rite unfolds. A circle of women standing at the tide's edge, holding hands. They sing, not loudly but clearly, a song older than most, a song of winds and widows, a song of ropes that never came back coiled, a song of the moon pulling at both tide and heart, their voices mix with the sea. As evening falls, the fishermen return their boats to anchor. Lanterns are lit along the quay, tables are set beneath nets strung like canopies. Bread is broken, stories are told. One man swears he saw a mermaid once tangled in his nets. A boy says he'll grow gills and live beneath the waves. A woman speaks of a dream where the sea turned to glass, and she walked across it to a place beyond storms. Laughter answers them all, not mocking but kind. Because the sea, like the festival, belongs to no one and to everyone. When the stars emerge, a final fire is lit. Not on land, but on the water. A small boat, empty and waiting, is pushed from the shore. Inside, a torch burns steady in a clay bowl, surrounded by rosemary and bread. It drifts slowly, like a prayer, out toward the dark horizon. Some say it carries away bad luck. Some say it carries messages to those lost beneath the waves. Some say nothing, only watch it go. In our next chapter, we will journey inland once more, to forests and highland paths, where hunters and gatherers once held feasts in the name of the wild, the festival of the hunt, a dance with death and bounty in the quiet shadow of the trees. But tonight, let the sound of waves lull you into stillness. Let the scent of salt and fire settle into your dreams. And if you listen closely, you may still hear the whisper of that little burning boat, bobbing somewhere out there in the dark, carrying hope on the tide. The wind rustles through the canopy, stirring the leaves in soft murmurs. It is early morning in the forest, and the shadows are long, stretched thin like fingers across the mossy ground. A stag steps lightly through the underbrush, its breath visible in the cool air, ears twitching with the sounds of distant movement. Somewhere, a horn sounds, low and hollow, and the forest stirs. The festival of the hunt has begun. It is not a celebration for all. It belongs to a specific kind of space, not the court, though nobles are there, and not the village, though villagers take part. It belongs to the woods, to the hills, to the ancient groves, where the air is thick with loam and legend. Here, beneath the arching boughs and in the breath of the wild, man remembers what he once was, a creature of pursuit, of instinct, of silence and speed, and so he celebrates it. In the days leading up to the festival, the hunting lodge awakens. Antlers are hung above doorways, hounds are fed richly, brushed until their coats shine, bows are restrung, spears sharpened, horns polished, feathers braided into caps, and boar's teeth worn on leather cords. Every tool is made ready, not just for use but for show. It is as much a rite as it is a chase. At dawn on the day itself, the hunters gather. Not all are noble, though the lord of the land usually leads. His tunic is deep green or blood red, embroidered with the crest of his house. Around him, men and women stand, foresters, pages, gamekeepers, guests, all clad in earthy hues, marked with sprigs of oak or yew. The huntmaster calls for silence, the dogs grow still, the horns are raised, the first note sounds, long, echoing through the trees like the voice of something older than man, and they move, not as a mob, but as an organism. Swift, sure, shifting through the forest with precision. Scouts ride ahead. Trackers scan the ground for signs, crushed grass, broken branches, the faintest smear of blood. The dogs are loosed, howling through the wood like spirits chasing a dream. The prey is out there, stag, boar, hart or hare, and though it does not know it, the forest is no longer safe. But the hunt is not just for meat, it is for meaning. It is a dance, a reenactment of the primal exchange between hunter and hunted, life and death, earth and blood. Each animal chased is revered as much as pursued. The stag, in particular, is sacred. Many believe it carries the soul of the forest, and only a true hunter, one blessed by skill and silence, may take it down. Some say the white stag, seen only once in a lifetime, brings visions to the one who follows it. Others whisper of green men, spirits of the wood, who appear during the festival to test the hearts of those who claim dominion over wild things. While the hunters chase their quarry, the village prepares its part of the feast. A great pit is dug, stones heated, spits are raised. Children gather bundles of herbs and mushrooms and stir cauldrons with wild garlic, barley and leeks. Mead is brewed from honeycombed-in forest hives. There is music too, wood flutes, rough drums, songs with words half forgotten, sung more for rhythm than meaning. At midday, the horns sound again. The quarry is taken. It may be quick. A clean shot, a swift strike, or long and grueling, marked by blood and breath and near loss. Either way, the animal is brought back with reverence, its body laid out upon a bed of pine. Prayers are spoken, thanks are given, a branch of oak or holly is placed upon its chest, and the youngest among the hunters lays a hand upon its flank and murmurs the words, "We take what we need and we remember." The feast begins at dusk, torches line the clearing. Tables of carved wood groan beneath platters of roast and root. The meat is shared, never hoarded. Even the poorest among the village eats well tonight. Ale spills freely, laughter rises like smoke. Stories are told of past hunts, some true, some not. The line doesn't matter, what matters is the telling. A play is performed, it is not scripted. A masked figure, the spirit of the hunt, enters the firelight, dressed in leaves and antlers, speaking in riddles. He dances with the hunter, who wears a wolf's pelt and carries a bow. They circle, clash, retreat, join hands. It is both duel and courtship. At the end, the hunter lays down his weapon and the spirit blesses him with a crown of thorns and pine cones. The meaning shifts from place to place. For some, it is a ritual of fertility. For others, a tale of balance, man in harmony with the wild. But in every telling, there is awe. Later still, when the fire burns low and the embers crackle, the elders speak, not loudly, not to many, just to those who listen. They tell of green glows seen deep in the trees, of the hunt eternal, a ghostly cavalcade led by a horned figure riding at midnight, chasing souls through storm and snow. Some say to hear its horn is to be called. Others say it's a warning, live with the forest, not above it. In the hush that follows, someone adds another log to the fire. Someone else begins a soft song in a language older than Latin. The forest listening does not speak, but it seems to settle. In the next chapter of our long journey, we will step into the courts of love, where festivals turn to poetry, and the art of flirtation becomes ritual, where troubadours sing of distant ladies, and hearts are won with words sharper than any arrow. But for now, lie still beneath the tall trees. Let the scent of pine and ash fill your breath, and know that for one night you are not apart from the wild. You are within it, and it within you. The petals fall gently from the trees, drifting on the breeze like slow, delicate snow. In the gardens of stone courtyards and along the quiet banks of castle moats, the air is thick with the perfume of roses and lavender. Lutes are being tuned, ribbons hang from the windows, and in every glance exchanged, in every half-smile, something stirs, something lighter than air, yet heavier than breath. It is the festival of courtly love. Unlike the rough laughter of fairs or the primal thunder of the hunt, this celebration unfolds in softer tones, whispered verses, secret tokens, and the art of emotion made ritual. It is a festival born in the high halls of noble courts, fostered by poets and carried forth by hearts too full for silence. It begins always with a poem. A troubadour stands in the centre of the hall. His cloak is simple, his voice steady. He sings not of war or saints, but of love, unreachable, unwavering, unreasoned. His words are in Occitan or French, delicate and strange. The crowd listens, not with noise, but with stillness. The poem is about a lady, unnamed, distant, perfect. Her smile is like the moon on silver, her gaze a wound. Her favour, salvation. This is fin amour, refined love, and it is not of the body but of the soul. In this tradition, a glance can change a life. A glove dropped and returned can seal a vow. A letter, hidden in the fold of a tunic, can burn hotter than any fire. It is love elevated beyond marriage or duty. It is longing without end, desire without possession. And so the festival honours this ideal with games. In the gardens, a court of love is assembled. The ladies preside, dressed in gowns of pale silk, their sleeves trailing like banners, their hair braided with pearls. They are judges today, and their judgments are feared and adored. Young knights and squires are brought forward one by one to plead their cases. "I am smitten," says one, "and she will not even look upon me." "She tests your patience," replies the lady. "Endure it. If you break, you never loved her truly." Another speaks, "I wrote her poems, but she favours another." "Then your verses are not yet worthy," comes the verdict. "Write again, better." It is play and yet not. Behind every word is sincerity. Behind every game, a truth. This is how young hearts are shaped, how virtues are practiced. Loyalty, humility, courage, not on the battlefield, but in the theatre of affection. Elsewhere, tokens are exchanged. A handkerchief embroidered with a flower. A ring too small to fit, passed from hand to hand. A braid of hair tied with red thread. These objects carry weight beyond gold. To wear such a token into battle is to carry the lady's spirit. To return it stained or lost is to confess failure. But not all is sweetness and sighs. There is also mischief. Masquerades are held in shaded pavilions where identities are hidden and hearts tested. A knight may dance with a woman whose name he does not know, yet whose voice he would follow into fire. A servant may pretend to be a noble and for one evening live a different story. The music flows like wine, flutes, lutes, soft drums. The dancers move in elegant patterns, slow, deliberate, like leaves turned in wind. No hand is held too long, no gaze lingers unchecked. Every moment holds both restraint and fire, and amid it all the poets walk. They do not dance, they watch, they whisper, they write. Later they will compose songs of this day, of the knight who stumbled on his words but not his heart, of the lady who laughed with her eyes but gave away nothing more, of the moment at sunset when two hands brushed and the world held its breath. As evening falls, the lovers' feast begins, not of meats and stews but of fruits and honeyed wine. Sweet things, soft things, things that leave the lips scented and the mind light. Games are played, riddles of passion, challenges of wit. What burns without flame? Longing. What flies without wings? Hope. And always the final challenge, write a verse, and if it pleases the court, you may kiss her hand. If not, you must serve her for a day, as her page, her shadow, her fool. Some pray to fail, for service too is its own kind of love. There is no fire tonight, no shouting. Only lanterns floating in the castle's pond, their light catching the underside of swans. Only murmurs in hallways, only footsteps in the dew-soaked grass. And somewhere in the tower, a lady reads a poem written just for her. She smiles. She does not answer. Not yet, because the beauty of courtly love is in the waiting. In the next chapter, we will return to the rhythm of labour and life, to the guilds and the craftspeople and their festivals of skill, where the maker is honoured, and even the act of weaving or hammering becomes a kind of devotion. But for now, close your eyes beneath silk stars, let the scent of roses drift into your dreams, and let your heart, for just a moment, believe in a love that asks for nothing and gives everything. The morning sun slips through the lattice windows, casting squares of gold upon the workshop floor. The scent of beeswax and warm wood lingers in the air. Outside, the town begins to stir, not with the clangor of battle nor the hush of prayer, but with the heartbeat of labour, steady and sure. It is the festival of the guilds. In every town and city across medieval Europe, the craftspeople held their own holy days, celebrations not of kings or saints, but of skill, of trade, of mastery. These were the days when the makers stepped forward not to toil, but to be seen. It begins before dawn. The blacksmith rises early, hands already stained with ash. The baker is shaping his 100th loaf by lamplight. The weaver finishes a tapestry that took half a year, tying the final knot with trembling fingers. Today they will not hide their work in shadowed corners. Today they will carry it into the streets. The guild banners are unfurled, each one bearing a sacred symbol. The hammer and anvil, the needle and shears, the quill and scroll, the carpenter's square. These are not just signs of trade, they are emblems of pride, of generations, of callings that define lives. At the heart of the town, a procession gathers, not of nobles on horseback, but of apprentices and masters marching side by side. Children in smocks carry tools larger than themselves. Journeymen wear belts heavy with their craft, chisels, brushes, keys, locks, some pushcarts piled with bread shaped like animals, wheels of cheese carved with holy symbols, barrels of sweet sour ale. Others carry candles moulded into saints, books bound in dyed leather, shoes so finely stitched they seem unreal. The streets become a moving workshop. Spectators line the lanes, clapping and calling out names. Goodman Ulrich, Mistress Genevieve, well done, Thomas the Younger. Pride beams from every face, for in these towns, it is the guilds who keep life spinning, who bake the bread, build the doors, forge the hinges, brew the beer, and for this one day their labour becomes celebration. At the main square, the guild masters step forward. Each offers a gift to the town, a carved crossbeam, a tapestry for the chapel, a feast table for the poor. These are not bribes nor debts. They are offerings given freely, crafted not just by hand but by heart. Then come the competitions. The bakers knead and shape their dough in public, racing the sun as it rises higher. The coopers build barrels against time, bands snapping into place with sharp, rhythmic strikes. The weavers race their shuttles across looms, threads flying in blurs of colour. The crowd cheers. Children shout suggestions. Even the mayor leans in, eyes wide with wonder, as a single piece of wood is transformed into a flute, a figure, a thing of beauty. And among it all, the apprentices. They are tested, not with written words, but with challenges. A boy is handed a hunk of leather and told to make a pouch before the bell rings thrice. A girl is given a torn hem and a needle no thicker than a sparrow's claw. She sews it perfectly, never once looking up. If they succeed, they are praised. If they fail, they are not scorned. Failure is part of the making. They bow, smile, and try again. Later, a great table is laid out beneath the town hall. No silk cloth, no silver chalices, only pewter, oak, and good food. Breads flavoured with rosemary and salt, stews thick with root and marrow, pies bursting with pear and spice. And the beer, hearty and dark, poured from great wooden casks by laughing boys with stained aprons. Songs rise like steam from the bowls. Not hymns, but work songs. Rhythmic, strong, built from the sounds of hammers and wheels. One begins, and others join, until the whole square is singing, feet tapping, hands clapping, voices lifted in one common voice. And when the sun begins to fall behind the roofs, a final rite is held. In the centre of the square, a wooden scaffold is raised. Upon it stands the master maker, chosen this year not for wealth or age, but for excellence. He is a cobbler, his hands are bent, his eyes cloudy, but his voice is clear. He speaks not of glory, but of grain, not of perfection, but of persistence. He tells the apprentices that mastery is not a gift, it is a choice, made every day, through sore fingers, through sleepless nights, through failures stacked like firewood. And then he passes down his tool, a knife, old and worn smooth. He gives it to the youngest apprentice. She holds it like it is made of gold. It is. That night, the town glows. Lanterns hang from the beams of every guild hall. Fires burn low in every forge. Couples dance in the streets. Children fall asleep beneath benches, flower in their hair. The tools are put away. The songs fade. But the feeling remains, because in this festival something has been honoured that is too often unseen. The hand that shapes, the eye that notices, the will that continues. In the next chapter, we will return to the darkness, not of sorrow, but of stars, to the festivals of the heavens, where constellations were honoured, and the sky became a stage for myths, portents, and wonder. But tonight, rest your hands, worn though they may be. Let the scent of bread and wood smoke wrap around you, and dream not of crowns, but of craft, of the quiet, beautiful work that keeps the world turning. Night has fallen, not the hurried dark of clouded skies or stormy dusk, but a true and endless night, vast and filled, where the heavens open like a book written in fire. The village lies quiet beneath it, the cottages darkened, the fires banked low, and yet the people are awake, gathering in fields, on hills, beside rivers that mirror the sky above. Tonight is the festival of the stars. Few calendars mark it, no saint presides. It is not born from church or crown. It is older, rooted in wonder, in pattern, in the turning wheel of the cosmos. And on this night, all eyes look upward, searching for meaning in the slow dance of light across the black. They begin by extinguishing the lamps. One by one, candles are snuffed, lanterns dimmed, hearths left cold. A hush falls over the town, not of fear but of reverence. The world grows still. The dark becomes not a thing to fear, but a curtain pulled back to reveal something greater. Children lie on blankets spread across the grass, their heads on their mothers' laps. Elders sit on carved stools, their hands wrapped in wool. Lovers sit shoulder to shoulder, their fingers brushing, their silence speaking, all waiting. And then, slowly, surely, the stars emerge. First one, then another, then 1,000, 1,000,000, more than can ever be counted. Gasps rise like prayer. Tonight is special, a night foretold, a celestial crossing, perhaps, when Venus brushes close to the crescent moon, or a meteor shower streaks like silver across the sky, or the great lion of stars known as Leo stands directly above the tallest tower. The wise women said it would be so. The shepherds saw it first. The monks even admit its truth. The heavens have shifted, and the people watch. There are stories, of course, old ones told in whispers, not to teach, but to remember. That is Orion, the hunter with his belt of 3 stars, who once chased the moon across the world and still runs after her in the sky. That is Cassiopeia, the queen too vain for the gods, now trapped in a throne of stars, turning ever over herself in shame. And there, low on the horizon, the 7 sisters, the Pleiades, dancing together in a cluster, never apart. A storyteller steps forward, no stage, no crown, just a voice and the dark. She speaks of a village that disappeared into the sky, of a boy who could read the stars like letters and found his way to a forgotten kingdom, of a dragon that sleeps in the Milky Way, coiled and dreaming until the world calls it forth. No one interrupts, no one drifts away, even the wind seems to pause. And when her voice fades, a new ritual begins. A circle of stones has been laid in the field, wide, careful, exact. Within it, candles are lit once more. Not many, just enough to glow like tiny stars upon the earth. People step forward, each carrying a token, a charm, a wish, a scrap of cloth, a piece of silver. These are placed in the centre. Offerings not to gods perhaps, but to the sky itself. A way of saying, we are here, we see you, remember us. A priest might call it superstition, a scholar might call it folly, but no one here doubts, because everyone has felt it, the pull of the stars, the strange aching peace they bring, as if they remember something you've forgotten, as if, for one moment, the vastness does not frighten you, but cradles you, softly, steadily. And then the songs begin, not grand hymns, not rehearsed harmonies, just voices lifted gently, a melody passed from elder to child, from wanderer to settler. No words are written down, they do not need to be. The stars know the tune. Somewhere behind the trees a drum joins in, low, heartbeat deep. A flute sings like wind across water. A girl with a voice clear as mountain air hums a note that seems to hang in the sky itself. The constellations look on, and somewhere, though no one says it aloud, someone makes a wish. A real one, not for gold or power, but for love, for health, for a child to be born strong, for the winter to be kind, for someone long gone to be remembered. Just before dawn, a silence returns. Not heavy, but complete. The stars begin to fade, washed pale by the approaching light. One by one, they vanish until only the brightest remain. And then, not even they. The people rise, slowly, brushing grass from their cloaks. They speak in murmurs now. They walk home with the gentleness of those who have glimpsed something vast and been allowed to live. Tomorrow, the fires will burn again. The fields will be worked. The markets will fill. But tonight, the world grew still. And in that stillness, the stars were close enough to touch. In our next chapter, we shall walk the paths of remembrance to festivals that honour not the saints or the skies, but the past itself, where ancestors are named aloud and memory becomes its own kind of sacred flame. But for now, use your eyes beneath a sky that still echoes with light. Let the last note of the song linger in your chest. And remember, even when you cannot see them, the stars remain, watching, waiting, burning quietly, just for you. The village is quiet now, the stars have faded, and the fields lie heavy with mist. Smoke curls from the chimneys once more, and the scent of baking bread returns to the air. But beneath the ordinary rhythm of the day, something else pulses, something older than fields, older even than the stones of the chapel. Today, the people remember. It is the festival of the ancestors. There are no horns or pageants, no bells, save for one, rung slowly once every hour. This is not a celebration of spectacle, it is a return, a stepping back into the folds of memory where the living and the dead sit together quietly around a fire that never fully goes out. At dawn, the villagers gather. Each carries something, a candle, a bowl, a carving, a name. The procession is silent, no laughter, no songs. Children walk beside their grandparents, not fidgeting for once, their hands clutching bundles of dried flowers or tiny wooden figures. They walk to the edge of the village, to the oldest tree or the oldest well or the low stone wall where the grass grows thin. There, a long wooden table has been set, not with food, not yet, with names, strips of parchment, smoothed stones, embroidered cloths. Each one bears a name written by hand, sometimes shaky, sometimes in an unfamiliar script. Names of those long gone, great-grandfathers, mothers who died in childbirth, children lost to fever, soldiers who never returned. Names that no longer belong to faces, but to stories. Each name is placed on the table with care. A woman whispers as she sets hers down. He always wore a red scarf. A boy adds a pebble beside his parchment. She used to sing to me when I cried. And one man, very old and very quiet, places nothing but his hand on the table for a long moment. Then he steps back, eyes wet, lips unmoving. The people take seats around the table, and one by one the stories begin. No grand speeches, just memory. Her hands smelled like rosemary. He carved all the spoons in our house. She danced in the fields until her feet bled. He told stories so well you forgot they weren't true. With each story, the past comes closer. The names become faces, the faces become voices, and the line between here and gone begins to soften. After the sharing, the feast is laid out, not just for the living. A second table is set, smaller, lower, beside the first. Plates are filled and placed there, each one set with care and intention. A cup of mead, a slice of cheese, a stew rich with root vegetables and slow-cooked meat. These are not symbolic, they are real, given freely, as if at any moment a hand might reach from shadow and take them. Children are taught to bow to this table, not with fear, but with respect. They are told, these were once like you, and you will one day be like them, so be kind, be generous, remember. Later, the flames are lit. Small, steady fires, one for each household. Not bonfires, not beacons, hearth flames. Gentle and contained. Around each fire, families gather. They speak names again. They burn herbs, sage for wisdom, lavender for peace, cedar for protection. The smoke drifts upward like prayers, like breath. Then come the songs. They are not loud, not even melodic. They are tones, hums, shared sounds, a communal remembering stitched into the air. Some families drum softly, others use rattles made from bone and seed. The rhythms vary, but together they form a slow pulsing wave, and in the middle of the night the door is left open. Just a crack, just wide enough. It is said the ancestors may walk tonight, not to speak, not to frighten, only to see, to linger, to know they are not forgotten. Some say they felt them, a hand on a shoulder, a sudden warmth, the scent of cinnamon or smoke or wildflowers long out of season. Some say nothing, but cry without knowing why. And some, the oldest, the quietest, sit up all night, guarding the flame, watching the doorway, whispering names like spells. In the morning, the fire is extinguished with a prayer. The food at the second table is taken and buried in the earth, returned to the land as all things are. The names are gathered and stored in a wooden chest, placed beneath the chapel floor or hidden in the roots of the old tree. Nothing is lost. Everything is carried. And in the next chapter, we will turn to festivals of light, those strange glowing celebrations that come not in summer, but in the darkest weeks of winter, when the night threatens to never end, and the people respond not with fear, but with fire. But tonight, let your thoughts wander gently. Think of the hands that once held yours, the voice that sang you to sleep, the face that only lives now in your mind's eye. And let the silence around you be filled, not with loneliness, but with presence, for the dead do not disappear, they are here, still always when remembered. The nights grow long, the sun slips away too quickly, setting before the work is done, leaving the world cloaked in a deep and weighty dark. The fields sleep now, buried under frost. The rivers slow, their edges brittle with ice. Inside every cottage, every hall, candles are lit earlier, fires burn longer, and silence presses against the windows like a thing alive. But the people do not give in to the dark. They answer it with light. This is the time of the winter illumination, the festival of light. 1,000 names, 100 customs, yet one heart, to hold back the night with fire, with colour, with hope. It begins on the longest night of the year, the solstice. A night when even the boldest feel small beneath the sky, when the stars seem brighter only because the world itself is so dim. But in towns and villages across the land, the people have prepared. All day, they gather bundles of pine, birch and ash. Tallow candles, carefully hoarded through the year, are trimmed and arranged. Lanterns are taken down from high shelves and polished until they gleam. And when the last ray of sunlight fades, a single flame is struck. One spark, then another, then 100. They begin at the centre of the village, a great circle marked with stones or an open square swept clean of snow. The first torch is lit by the eldest woman, her hands trembling but sure. She speaks no words. She does not need to. And from her flame, others are kindled. Children hold lanterns shaped like stars, moons, suns, some made of paper, others of glass. They walk in a slow procession, winding through the town, placing lights on every doorstep, every windowsill, every gate. The darkness retreats, not in great leaps, but in hundreds of tiny defeats. Every spark matters. There is no noise, not yet. Just the shuffle of feet, the crackle of flame, the soft breath of winter wind. The world watches. Then, when the last lantern is placed and the circle is complete, the music begins. Not loud, not raucous. Gentle at first. Bells, flutes, voices humming in harmony. Songs of old sun gods and sleeping earth. Songs that tell of light born in darkness, of warmth waiting to return. In some places, a fire wheel is rolled down the hill, a great circle of wood and iron set ablaze, turning and blazing as it tumbles into the valley below. The people cheer, not in triumph but in joy, in defiance. In others, sky lanterns are released. Tiny flames trapped in oiled paper, rising one by one into the cold air. Wishes are tied to their strings, some written, some whispered. They float upward, glowing like a second set of stars, dancing with the constellations. Inside the homes, candles are placed in bowls of water, set afloat and left to drift. If the candle reaches the far side of the bowl without sinking, it is said a wish will come true. If it goes out too soon, the wish must be carried again on another night. No one cries when a flame dies, because here in this festival, all light is sacred, even the ones that fade. In the larger towns, towers are outlined in flame. Arches are strung with garlands of glowing berries and golden leaves. Sometimes, coloured glass is placed in front of each candle, casting red and green and blue shadows across the cobbles. Children chase those colours with wide eyes, their cheeks ruddy, their hands sticky from honeyed nuts and spiced cider. But the heart of the festival is not in spectacle. It is in the quiet moment. A man standing at his doorstep, staring at a single flame, thinking of those who once stood beside him. A girl holding a candle beside her sick brother's bed, humming softly until he sleeps. A widow lighting 12 candles, one for each year since his passing, and watching the light blur through her tears. The night deepens. The stars shine brighter, and then at midnight, the fires are gathered. Every family brings one ember, one coal, one glowing splinter to the centre. There, a new fire is built, not from twigs or branches, but from wishes. From fragments of old tools, bits of broken chairs, worn-out broom handles, even a child's wooden toy that can no longer roll. They place these gently one by one and the fire grows. It is the light of the year to come. They dance around it, slowly in circles, hands joined, mouths open in song. No rehearsed steps, no leader, just movement, honest and warm. Even those who cannot dance sit close, letting the fire paint their faces with gold. As the flames rise, the cold retreats. The night is still long, the winter still cruel, but the people do not fear it, because they have lit the dark. In the next chapter, we will journey to the edges of belief and wonder, to festivals where monsters walk and chaos reigns, where the world turns wild before it can be born anew. But for now, let your heart rest in the glow. Feel the warmth on your face, the hush in your lungs. Let the fire within you mirror the one without. And know, as every flickering flame has always known, light does not flee the dark, it meets it and shines. The fire has dimmed, Ash drifts softly on the wind, and though the lanterns still glow in the windows, there is a new feeling stirring beneath the stillness, something restless, something wild. It does not come from the stars, nor from the quiet of memory, nor even from the reverence of firelight. It comes from the deep places, from the corners where shadows gather, from the whispering edge of the woods. The world is ready to be unmade, if only for a night. This is the festival of the wild ones. It arrives when the old year has crumbled and the new one has not yet begun. A liminal time, between calendars, between truths. A night when order steps aside and something ancient slips in, on cloven hooves, in horned masks, in laughter too loud to be entirely human. It begins at the fall of darkness. Doors are locked. Lanterns are turned inward. The bells that ring during this night are not made of silver or bronze, but of bone and iron. The air grows sharp, not with snow, but with tension, the kind that makes animals still and children wide-eyed, and then from the woods they come, the wild ones. Clad in furs and feathers, in bones and bark, in masks shaped like wolves and crows and beasts that never were. Some walk upright, draped in black, others crawl. Some leap and howl, others stalk like silent hunters. No two are alike. They are tricksters, spirits, shadows. They are the ancient chaos that lives beneath the surface of law and prayer. The villagers wait. This is not a performance, it is a pact. The wild ones parade through the streets, banging drums, dragging chains, cracking whips made of straw and switch. They chase the foolish and steal the hats from the brave. They rattle at windows, climb roofs, howl at chimneys. They overturn carts, smear soot on doors, snatch pastries from pantries. The rules for this one night are theirs. Children are told, do not speak to them. Do not call them by name. If they offer you something, take it. If they demand something, give it. If they touch your shoulder, run. In some places there is a king among them, crowned in antlers, face painted with ash, robe made of stitched-together pelts. He carries a crooked staff. He speaks in a voice like thunder swallowed by wind. His words are nonsense and prophecy all at once. People kneel before him, not out of fear, but in recognition he is not real, but he is true. The revelry lasts for hours. Wild dancers swirl through the streets, the fires are stoked high, music rises, not gentle songs, but sharp, wild, pulsing rhythms. Flutes scream, drums gallop, horns blare like battle cries. No one dances with grace. They dance with abandon. Faces streaked in charcoal, arms outstretched, hair flying, the lines between person and beast blur, and in the chaos, wisdom. For this is not destruction without meaning. It is not cruelty. It is the reminder that the world, so carefully ordered, so full of rules and roles, is fragile. That beneath the crown lies a skull. That laughter can become a snarl. That the earth is older than our cities and it remembers how to grow wild. At midnight, the wild ones vanish. Not all at once, one by one, into shadows, into woods, into cellars, into smoke. Some say they melt into the snow, others that they never were. Only masks worn by the wind. A great silence follows, then slowly the people emerge. Doors open, lanterns relit. The streets are strewn with straw, with footprints, with feathers and ribbons and broken sticks. But no one cleans, not yet. Instead, they gather again at the fire, the one they lit for the Festival of Light. It has burned low, but not out. The king's staff, if it can be found, is cast into the embers. The ashes of his crown are scattered to the night. And the people begin to sing again, not wild now, but slow, low, steady. The world begins to return. Children are hugged, bread is shared, ale passed. Hands that danced in madness now rest in calm. The village breathes together. The wild ones have gone, but they have left something behind, a reminder deep in the bones that we are not only what we build and tame, that chaos has its place, that sometimes the old year must be broken before the new one can begin. In the final chapter of this long tale, we will gather at the threshold once more, where all festivals end and begin again, and speak of why we celebrate at all, of what these stories, these fires, these dances have meant, and why we still need them. But for now, curl close to the embers, let the last feathers fall, let your breath slow, your heart settle. The wild has passed through you, and you through it. The year draws to its end. Not in silence, but in stillness, a hush that settles over rooftops, through forests, across rivers, and into the quiet corners of every home. It is a breath held before the first note of a new song, a space between heartbeats, a pause long enough to ask the oldest question of all. Why do we celebrate? The festivals are over now, for a time. The masks have been hung, the lanterns dimmed, the ashes cooled. The wild ones are gone, the saints back in their niches, the saints' relics wrapped again in silk and reverence. The fields sleep, the stars wheel on, and yet something remains. A warmth deeper than fire, a rhythm quieter than song, a memory of dancing feet, of hands clasped in circles, of stories whispered over stew and cider and candles. We celebrate not because life is easy, we celebrate because life is alive, because time moves forward and we are still here to mark it, because the wheel turns. From planting to harvest, from light to dark, from feast to fast, and every turn deserves its moment, its breath, its firelight. In the quiet villages and high cities, among kings and millers and masked children, the people of the Middle Ages knew this truth in their bones. They carved joy into the shape of ritual. They stitched longing into garlands and songs. They lit torches in defiance of winter, danced with spirits, honoured the dead, and crowned fools, all with a kind of sacred delight. They made meaning with their hands, their voices, their hearts, and perhaps more than anything, they understood that celebration is not escape. It is return. A return to the body, the land, the community, the spirit. A return to the stories that hold us when nothing else can. So on this final night, the people gather once more, not in crowds, but in twos, in threes, in solitude and in company. A candle is lit, a prayer is murmured or not. A song is hummed under one's breath or merely remembered. A piece of bread is shared. A child is held a little closer. There are no parades, no plays, no grand declarations, only breath, only silence, only a few last embers in the hearth. Outside, the frost glitters, the moon rests low, and the air is full, not of sound, but of presence. The presence of every story told, of every footstep taken across dirt and stone, of every voice raised in joy, in sorrow, in prayer, laughter. And in this presence, a new year waits. A year that will bring more festivals, more fire, more masks and songs and holy days and wild nights. A year that will ask again for your hands, your voice, your hope. But tonight, just this once, there is no need to move forward, only to rest, to remember, to carry the warmth of all that has been, the wheat crowned in harvest, the mask worn in love, the bread broken in grief, the fire lit in darkness. And in this rest, in this final moment, one truth remains: the festival never truly ends. It only sleeps, like the earth, like the sun, waiting to rise again. So close your eyes now. Let the year pass gently from you, like smoke rising from a candle just blown out. And when the dawn comes, as it always does, let it find you ready to dance once more.